To before pyramids, kings, or written history, the world was a wild and unpredictable place. Giant creatures lived across vast continents, oceans contained life forms unlike anything alive today, and early humans survived under skies lit only by stars and fire. The prehistoric era was old, mysterious, and filled with details scientists are still uncovering. In this video, we'll move quietly into that ancient world, moving through earlier ages, unusual ecosystems, extinct species, and recorded events that shaped the development of life on Earth. Before we begin, drop in the comments below where in the world you're watching from and what time it is there now. Then, settle in as we travel back to the prehistoric era. To understand how Earth came into existence around 4.5 billion years ago, we have to go back to a time when the Sun was not yet fully formed, when space around it was filled with chaos, heat, collisions, and endless drifting materials waiting to come together to create something new. The story of Earth's formation is not just about rocks and dust. It is a story of violent forces, tremendous energy, and tiny particles slowly building the foundation of the planet we live on today. Scientists say that around 4.5 billion years ago, the area where the solar system sits was just part of a giant cloud made mostly of hydrogen and helium gas, mixed with fine particles from earlier generations of stars. These particles were leftovers from massive stars that had lived, burned brilliantly, and exploded long before the Sun was born. When those ancient stars exploded, they scattered heavy elements like iron, silicon, carbon, and oxygen across space. Those materials drifted for millions of years until they gathered in a region that would become the birthplace of our solar system. The process began when something triggered the cloud to collapse inward. It might have been the shockwave of a nearby exploding star, or it could have been natural gravitational changes within the cloud itself. Whatever the cause, the moment the cloud began collapsing, gravity pulled everything tighter and tighter toward the center. As the cloud collapsed, it began to spin. At first, it spun slowly, but as the cloud became smaller, it spun faster and flattened into a shape like a giant disk. This spinning disk, known as the solar nebula, stretched for billions of kilometers and contained everything needed to form the Sun, Earth, and all the planets. At the center of the spinning disk, thick clouds of gas and dust packed tightly together until the pressure became so intense that nuclear reactions began. These reactions created heat and light, and that was the moment the Sun was born. The Sun turned into a blazing sphere of hot gas, lighting up the surrounding disk and sending powerful radiation across space. But around the Sun, the rest of the material in the disk did not disappear. Instead, the remaining dust grains, metal flakes, and frozen particles began to slowly stick together as they bumped into each other. These collisions were gentle at first, as tiny particles clumped into larger grains, then into pebbles, then into rocks the size of mountains. Over time, these growing pieces, called planetesimals, became so large that their gravity pulled in more and more material. Each planetesimal competed for dust, stones, and gas in its part of the disk. The larger a planetesimal grew, the more powerful its gravitational pull, and the faster it could gather even more mass. In the region where Earth was forming, countless planetesimals crashed into one another in a dramatic and chaotic process. Some merged to become bigger bodies, while others were shattered into smaller pieces, only to collide and merge again later. The process was violent and full of constant movement. Imagine giant rocks, some as large as small planets, smashing into each other with unimaginable force, releasing heat so intense that the surfaces of these newborn worlds turned into oceans of molten rock. In this chaotic environment, the early Earth began to grow. Scientists believe that it took tens of millions of years for the young Earth to reach a size big enough to begin shaping itself as a true planet. During this time, collisions were so frequent that the entire surface of the growing Earth may have been molten, glowing red and orange like a giant ball of lava drifting in space. But Earth did not grow in peace. Around the same period, another large body was forming nearby. This body is known today as Theia. According to the most accepted scientific explanation, Theia was roughly the size of the current planet Mars. Earth and Theia orbited the young Sun in similar regions of space, and eventually their paths crossed. Theia smashed into Earth with incredible force. The collision between Earth and Theia remains one of the defining events of Earth's early history. The impact was so intense that a large portion of Earth's outer layers, along with most of Theia, was blasted into space. These scattered materials did not float away into the darkness. Instead, they began to gather and merge again, forming a ring of debris around Earth. Over time, the debris from that massive impact slowly came together under gravity to form what would become Earth's moon. Scientists believe this process happened fairly quickly in cosmic terms, perhaps within a few thousands of years after the collision. The newly formed moon orbited much closer to Earth than it does now, appearing huge in the sky, but over billions of years it steadily moved farther away to its current distance. The birth of the moon played a major role in calming Earth's rotation and stabilizing its tilt, factors that would eventually make life possible. After the violent collision, Earth was covered once again in molten rock. The heat from the impact was so great that parts of the planet's surface remained liquid for a long time. It took millions of years for Earth's surface to cool down enough to form a solid crust. Even then, the crust was thin and unstable. Volcanoes erupted constantly, releasing enormous amounts of gas into the atmosphere. These early volcanic gases included water vapor, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, and other chemicals that gradually formed the planet's first atmosphere. But this early atmosphere was nothing like the air people breathe today. There was no oxygen, and the sky may have looked thick and hazy. As the planet continued to cool, the water vapor released by volcanoes began to condense. Rain fell for countless years, possibly millions of years, filling the deepest parts of Earth's surface and forming the first oceans. These early oceans were far different from the oceans of today. They were filled with dissolved minerals from the molten crust, and their temperatures may have been much higher. But they created the conditions necessary for chemistry to grow more complex. Deep inside Earth, heavier materials like iron and nickel continued to sink toward the center, while lighter materials floated toward the surface. This separation, known as differentiation, created Earth's layered structure: a solid inner core, a liquid outer core, a thick mantle of partly molten rock, and a thin solid crust at the top. The formation of the core was especially important because it produced Earth's magnetic field. This invisible shield protects the planet from harmful solar radiation and cosmic particles, allowing life to develop in a safer environment. Meanwhile, large asteroids and comets continued to bombard Earth. Although this sounds dangerous, these impacts brought vital materials to the planet. Many scientists believe that comets and water-rich asteroids delivered a large portion of Earth's water, adding to the early oceans. Some impacts may have even carried organic molecules, the building blocks of life, seeding the young planet with the ingredients needed for living organisms to eventually appear. During this time, the Sun was also going through changes. Young stars like the Sun are known to release bursts of powerful radiation and streams of charged particles known as solar winds. These early solar winds blew away much of the lighter gas around the inner solar system, making it difficult for planets close to the Sun, like Earth, Venus and Mars, to hold on to thick atmospheres of hydrogen and helium. Because Earth had already begun forming a heavier atmosphere from volcanic gases, it was able to keep enough air to continue developing, while the gas giants farther away retained enormous amounts of hydrogen and helium. The cooling of Earth's surface allowed the crust to thicken slowly. But the crust did not remain still. Heat from the mantle beneath caused pieces of crust to crack and shift. These shifting pieces, known as tectonic plates, began moving very slowly over the mantle. Even in the earliest times, this movement helped shape Earth's surface, lifting some regions into primitive mountain ranges while creating deep depressions in other areas. Volcanoes built up new land, while impacts from large space rocks continued to shape the young planet. The atmosphere kept changing too. Over millions of years, the constant volcanic eruptions released gases that thickened the air and trapped heat. This created what scientists call a greenhouse effect, keeping Earth warm enough for liquid water to remain on its surface. Without this natural warming, Earth could have been far too cold for water to stay in liquid form. As time passed, the oceans became more stable, and the planet settled into a more predictable pattern of cooling, heating, volcanic activity, and tectonic movement. These changes slowly created environments where chemical reactions grew more complex. The oceans, heated by underwater volcanoes and rich with minerals, transformed into natural laboratories where simple molecules crashed together to form more complicated ones. Although life had not yet started, The ingredients were gathering, mixing, and transforming into something that would eventually lead to the first living cells. The early sky may have looked red or orange because the atmosphere was filled with volcanic gases and tiny particles. Lightning storms likely happened often, striking the oceans and providing bursts of energy that helped chemical reactions take place. The surface of the young Earth was not peaceful. It was full of eruptions, collisions, boiling waters, and shifting lands. But all this activity helped shape the planet's environment into one where life could eventually appear. After hundreds of millions of years, Earth's surface gradually became more stable. The crust thickened, the ocean spread wider, and volcanic activity, though still common, became less violent compared to the earliest times. The atmosphere continued to change as volcanic gases decreased, and new chemical reactions took place in the oceans and air. Some gases escaped into space, carried away by solar winds, while others reacted with minerals in the crust. Slowly, the levels of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur, and water vapor shifted. By the time Earth reached around 1 billion years of age, it had already undergone several major transformations. The continents were beginning to form larger landmasses as tectonic plates moved. The oceans had cooled significantly compared to their early boiling state. The atmosphere was slowly becoming clearer, though still nothing like today's breathable air. Many scientists believe that lightning, volcanic gases, and the chemical-rich environment of the early oceans eventually led to the formation of extremely simple molecules that could make copies of themselves. These were not living cells yet, but they were important steps toward life. The oceans became places where energy, heat, minerals, and chemicals interacted constantly, giving rise to early structures that could grow, change, and react to their surroundings. Although the origin of life is a story of its own, it is connected to Earth's formation because every step that happened in those first hundreds of millions of years created the conditions needed for life to emerge. The formation of the core produced the magnetic field that protected the planet's surface from harmful radiation. The formation of the oceans provided a stable environment for chemical reactions. The formation of the crust created land masses and minerals that contributed to the chemistry of early oceans. The formation of the atmosphere provided the gases needed for temperature control, weather patterns, and the chemical balance that would later support living organisms. Each stage of Earth's formation took millions or billions of years, and none of it happened quickly. The process involved countless collisions, eruptions, chemical reactions, and transformations that shaped the planet into a world capable of supporting life. Even after Earth became a stable, solid planet with oceans and an atmosphere, it continued to change. The continents drifted, mountains rose and fell, oceans opened and closed, and the atmosphere continued developing in complex ways. Millions of years after Earth's surface cooled, the planet was still bombarded by smaller asteroids and comets, though the impacts were less frequent than before. Each impact added new materials, carved craters, and occasionally caused major changes to Earth's environment. But over long periods, the number of impacts decreased, giving Earth the chance to develop more stable conditions. Volcanoes continued to play a huge role in shaping the world. They released gases, formed new land, and brought up minerals from deep beneath the crust. The constant recycling of material between the surface and the mantle through volcanic eruptions and tectonic activity kept Earth geologically active. Unlike many planets and moons that eventually became cold and inactive, Earth continued moving, shaping, and transforming itself. Deep inside, the core kept spinning, generating the magnetic field that pushed harmful solar winds away. Without this protective field, Earth might have lost its atmosphere entirely, leaving the surface exposed to extreme radiation. But with a magnetic field in place, Earth remained shielded, allowing the atmosphere to thicken and evolve. The Sun also became more stable over time. In its early years, the Sun had been unstable, sending out powerful radiation that could strip away the atmosphere of planets that were not well protected. But as the Sun aged over billions of years, it settled into a more regular pattern, providing steady warmth and light. Earth continued to change slowly. The first continents grew as volcanic islands merged and cooled. Rocks formed, broke down, and reformed. Water cycled between the oceans, atmosphere, and land. The wind shaped the first landscapes, and the oceans carved the early shorelines. The crust also experienced powerful shifts that caused entire land masses to move across the planet's surface, a process that continues today. By the time Earth was a few billion years old, it had transformed from a ball of molten rock into a world with oceans, land, an atmosphere, and the early ingredients needed for life. Life did not begin with complicated creatures. It began with structures so tiny they could not be seen with human eyes. These were single-celled organisms, extremely simple forms of life that carried out the most basic tasks that define living things, using energy, growing, surviving, and making copies of themselves. Even though they were simple, they were the ancestors of every plant, every animal, and every human that would ever live. Understanding how these earliest tiny beings appeared and lived is like looking at the first page in a very long book, a book that continues being written even today. Geologists and biologists estimate that Earth formed around 4.5 billion years ago. After that formation, the young planet was extremely hot, constantly hit by asteroids, and filled with volcanic eruptions. There were no continents as we know them, no clean oceans, and no stable atmosphere. For hundreds of millions of years, the surface of Earth was too unstable and too harsh for life to exist. But slowly, as volcanic activity changed the atmosphere, and as the surface cooled down, large bodies of water formed. These bodies of water, early oceans, became the birthplace of the first living organisms. Scientists believe that the first signs of life appeared around 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. This period is so ancient that the rocks holding clues to these organisms are extremely rare. Many original rocks from that era have been destroyed or changed by heat, pressure, and time. Yet, some rocks have survived long enough to tell a quiet but powerful story of the earliest life. Within these rocks, scientists have found tiny structures, chemical signatures, and shapes that suggest the presence of ancient microorganisms. These earliest living beings were single-celled organisms most likely similar to bacteria and a group called archaea. These organisms were incredibly small, so small that if you lined up thousands of them, they might still fit on the tip of a needle. But small size does not mean lack of importance. Their existence transformed the planet over billions of years. They slowly changed the atmosphere, shaped the oceans, and prepared the world so more complex life could one day appear. The earliest single-celled organisms had no eyes, ears, or limbs. They had no brains and no nervous systems. Yet they were alive, and they carried out activities essential for life. They absorbed energy from their surroundings. They used simple chemicals to grow and divide. They reacted to changes in temperature, light, and nutrients. In many ways, they were like tiny self-running machines made of organic material, working non-stop in an environment completely unlike anything we know today. One major question people often ask is how these earliest organisms came into existence. The truth is that scientists still do not know the exact process, but they have several strong theories. One widely discussed idea is that life began when simple molecules in the early ocean started to combine and form more complex organic compounds. Over long periods of time, these compounds arranged themselves into structures capable of copying themselves. Once copying began, evolution had a starting point. Another theory suggests that life's building blocks may have arrived from outer space. Some meteorites contain complex organic molecules, and scientists have discovered that simple components of life can form in space under the right conditions. If these molecules reached Earth, they might have mixed with materials in the developing oceans and contributed to the formation of the earliest living organisms. Whether life started purely on Earth or received help from the cosmos is still unknown, but both possibilities show how delicate and surprising the beginnings of life may have been. Regardless of how life began, once those first single-celled organisms appeared, they started the slow process of biological evolution. Evolution is simply the change of living organisms over long periods of time. When these early organisms divided, sometimes tiny mistakes happened in their genetic material. These mistakes, known as mutations, sometimes made the organisms slightly different. Some differences were harmful, some had no effect, and some provided advantages. Organisms with helpful traits survived better and reproduced more. Over countless generations, these small changes added up, leading to new forms of life. During these early ages, the Earth's oceans were likely dark, warm, and filled with minerals from volcanic activity. Instead of oxygen, the atmosphere was mostly made up of gases like methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. There was no breathable air, and sunlight reaching the surface was weaker due to thick clouds. In this environment, the earliest organisms found ways to survive without oxygen. They used chemical reactions involving sulfur, iron or methane. Some of them lived near hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where extremely hot mineral-rich water flowed out. These vents were like underwater factories of energy, releasing the heat and chemicals needed for life to thrive. Even today, scientists find organisms living around deep-sea vents that do not rely on sunlight at all. These modern organisms are thought to closely resemble the earliest life on Earth. They convert chemicals from the vent water into energy through a process called chemosynthesis. This shows that life does not always need sunlight. It only needs a source of energy and the right chemical environment. One of the most remarkable steps in the story of early life was the rise of photosynthesis. At first, the earliest single-celled organisms did not use sunlight, but after millions of years, some organisms developed the ability to use sunlight to create energy. They took in sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and produced energy-rich molecules they could use for survival. In this process, they also produced oxygen as a waste product. This small change would eventually reshape the entire planet. These early photosynthetic organisms were similar to what we now call cyanobacteria. They were single-celled and lived in large colonies. Over time, they formed layered structures called stromatolites. Some of these ancient stromatolites still exist today, preserved in places like Australia. They are like ancient monuments left behind by the first forms of life that learned to use sunlight. As cyanobacteria became more common, they released more and more oxygen into the atmosphere. At first, this oxygen reacted with minerals in the oceans and rocks, so it did not gather in the air right away. But eventually the oxygen levels increased enough to change the atmosphere permanently. This event, known as the Great Oxygenation Event, took place around 2.5 billion years ago. It may sound like a positive moment, but for many organisms at the time, oxygen was poisonous. Many early organisms died out or were pushed into environments where oxygen could not reach them. Yet, this change also opened the door for new life forms that could use oxygen to produce more energy than ever before. The rise of oxygen transformed the oceans and the atmosphere. It also led to the formation of the protective ozone layer, which blocked harmful radiation from reaching the surface of Earth. With this shield in place, life on the surface and in shallow waters had a better chance of surviving and developing into more complex forms. Without oxygen and the ozone layer, the evolution of plants, animals, and eventually humans would never have been possible. While all this was happening, the earliest organisms continued evolving in countless ways. Some developed stronger cell walls, others created new ways to use energy. Some formed partnerships with other organisms, living together in ways that benefited both sides. One of the most important evolutionary steps is believed to have been the merging of two different single-celled organisms. Scientists call this the endosymbiotic theory. According to this idea, a larger single-celled organism swallowed a smaller one, but instead of digesting it, they formed a cooperative relationship. The smaller organism helped the larger one process energy more efficiently, and over time it became a permanent part of the cell. This event eventually led to the formation of more complex cells known as eukaryotic cells. These are the types of cells found in plants, animals, and fungi today. They contain special structures such as mitochondria and chloroplasts that help them produce energy. Each of these structures is believed to have once been an independent organism billions of years ago. This means that complex life is, in a way, a result of ancient partnerships. As billions of years passed, these evolving cells began to develop more features that allowed them to adapt, survive, and reproduce in new ways. Some learned how to survive harsh conditions by forming protective layers. Others developed ways to move toward food or away from danger. Many of these adaptations may seem small or simple, but over long periods of time, they allowed life to spread into different environments and become more diverse. During these early stages of evolution, there were no creatures with bones, no plants with leaves, and no animals with organs. But the basic processes that would eventually give rise to such creatures were already developing. Genetic material was becoming more organized. Cells were learning to communicate with each other. Some cells began forming groups working together for survival. These early groupings were not yet true multicellular organisms, but they showed the first signs of cooperation between cells. The gradual shift from single-celled to multicellular life was another major milestone. It may have begun when cells that were dividing did not separate completely, staying attached to each other. Over time, these groups of cells began to specialize. Some cells became responsible for gathering food, while others protected the colony or helped it move. This simple division of labour led to more complex structures, and eventually to the development of the first true multicellular organisms. Throughout all these changes, life was constantly shaped by the environment. Volcanic eruptions, shifting continents, changes in ocean chemistry, and variations in temperature all influenced how organisms evolved. When the environment became harsh, only the organisms that could adapt would survive. This is the basic idea of natural selection, a key element of evolution. Life was not guided by a plan. It evolved through countless small changes that helped organisms survive and reproduce. The earliest signs of life on Earth did not leave behind fossils as clear or detailed as the bones of dinosaurs or mammals. Their remains were too tiny and too delicate. But the chemical traces they left in ancient rocks tell us about their presence. Some rocks contain patterns of carbon that suggest life existed when those rocks formed. Others contain tiny structures within minerals that look like microscopic cells. Scientists study these traces carefully to piece together the story of life's beginnings. These discoveries are extremely important because they show that life appeared on Earth quite early in the planet's history. This suggests that under the right conditions, life can form more easily than we once thought. If life began so quickly on Earth, then the possibility of life on other planets becomes more believable. Many scientists wonder whether simple life forms might exist, or might have existed on places like Mars, Europa, or Enceladus, moons that hold underground oceans. Studying the earlier signs of life also helps us understand our own origins. Every human, every animal, and every plant is connected through billions of years of evolution to those first single-celled organisms. Even though they were tiny, they set the foundation for the development of all the complex structures found in living things today. Their story is not just a scientific explanation, it is a deep reminder that life, in all its diversity and beauty, started from something incredibly small. When we think about these first organisms, it is easy to overlook how long their era lasted. For almost 2 billion years, the Earth was home only to single-celled organisms. Complex life is a recent development compared to the long age of microbial dominance. These early microorganisms ruled the planet for far longer than animals or humans have existed. They shaped the oceans, released oxygen, and prepared the world for all the changes that would follow. Over long stretches of time, new environments formed on Earth. Oceans cooled, land masses appeared, and conditions changed repeatedly. But the early organisms kept evolving, adapting to each new challenge. Some found ways to survive in extremely salty waters. Others thrived in hot springs or acidic environments. Some learned to form protective coatings, allowing them to survive dry periods or intense heat. The variety of environments created many opportunities for organisms to diversify. The story of these earlier single-celled organisms also includes long periods of global change. There were times when the Earth was covered in ice, possibly from pole to pole. These severe ice ages would have been difficult for many organisms, but some survived in small pockets of warmth or near underwater vents. Their survival through such harsh conditions shows how resilient life can be, even in the simplest forms. Stars, asteroids, volcanoes, oceans, and chemical reactions all played roles in shaping the earliest life. Life depended heavily on the conditions present on the young planet. It needed the right temperature range, the right chemical ingredients, and a source of energy. Without these, the first organisms would never have formed. Over time, as conditions changed, life found new paths and new opportunities. As the atmosphere slowly filled with oxygen, some organisms evolved ways to use this new gas to create energy through respiration. This process is much more efficient than the chemical reactions used by earlier organisms. With more energy available, cells could grow larger and develop new features. This eventually led the way to more advanced and diverse forms of life. Even though we understand more about early life now than ever before, many mysteries remain. Scientists continue studying ancient rocks, deep-sea vents, and extreme environments to discover clues that might answer questions about the first organisms. They use powerful microscopes, chemical tests, and computer models to simulate early Earth conditions. Each new discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, helping us understand how life began and how it changed over billions of years. One fascinating detail about early organisms is how their simple structures carried within them the seeds of future complexity. The genetic material they used to store information became the basis for DNA in all modern organisms. Their methods of copying themselves became more refined over time. Their basic cell membranes, once simple and fragile, evolved into stronger structures capable of supporting complex cells. These small steps, repeated countless times across billions of years, slowly transformed life from tiny organisms floating in ancient oceans to the vast diversity we see today. From bacteria to plants, from fish to mammals, every living thing carries a connection to those first single-celled ancestors. The rise of multicellular creatures begins with a very slow story that stretches across billions of years, reaching back to a time when Earth was still young, and the oceans were the main stage for every living thing that existed. In those very early days, the planet held only simple life forms, mostly tiny single-celled organisms that could barely be seen even with powerful tools used today. These small organisms drifted in the water, survived on sunlight, chemicals, or small nutrients around them, and reproduced by splitting themselves into two identical copies. They had no organs, no tissues, no bones, no muscles, and no complicated behaviours. Yet within their simple bodies were the basic building blocks that would later make possible the rise of creatures with many cells, larger bodies, and abilities far beyond anything found in those earliest times. Life had already existed on Earth for more than 1 billion years before any form of multicellularity appeared. During that long stretch, single-celled organisms ruled every part of the planet's oceans. The world was a place with warm waters in some regions, icy waters in others, volcanic vents releasing minerals, and countless microscopic organisms trying to survive in an ever-changing environment. The tiny living things gradually learned to use sunlight in a process now known as photosynthesis, which allowed them to turn light into energy and release oxygen. This oxygen slowly filled the oceans and the atmosphere, but the change did not happen quickly. It took hundreds of millions of years for oxygen levels to rise to a point where more complex forms of life could even begin to survive. Many early single-celled organisms could not handle the oxygen-rich water and died out, while others adapted and learned to use oxygen to create energy more efficiently. As oxygen became more common, life on Earth moved toward a path that allowed new possibilities to open. Single-celled organisms began to discover new ways to cooperate. At first, these early cooperative groups were temporary gatherings of cells working together for protection or to gather food. Sometimes cells stuck together after dividing because it gave them an advantage against changing conditions or predators. These stuck-together cells formed small clusters where each cell still acted mostly on its own, but the cooperation helped them survive better than cells that remained alone. Over many generations, these loose clusters began to form stronger bonds. Instead of falling apart after a short time, the connected cells stayed together, creating early forms of multicellular structures. Each cell inside the group started to take on slightly different roles. Some cells focused on gathering nutrients, others on movement, and others on reproduction. This was the beginning of specialization, one of the most important steps in the rise of truly multicellular life. Specialization meant that not every cell had to do everything. Instead, individual cells could focus on what they were best at, which made the whole group stronger and more efficient. One of the oldest known multicellular organisms appeared more than 2 billion years ago, and although scientists continue to study these early fossils, much about them remains mysterious. These early multicellular creatures did not yet have the organized tissues or organs seen in modern animals. They were more like simple sheets or clusters of cells sticking together, sometimes forming layers. Their bodies were soft and left few traces behind, which is why scientists must study rare remains preserved in ancient rocks. These early steps toward multicellularity were small, but they changed the future of life on Earth in ways that no single-celled creature could have ever shaped alone. As time passed, over tens of millions and then hundreds of millions of years, the transition from single cells to truly multicellular forms became more advanced. Many different groups of organisms began to experiment with this new way of living. Some attempts failed, disappearing without leaving any descendants. Others succeeded and continued evolving into more complex shapes and forms. The world was slowly filling with living things that were no longer just tiny specks under the water, but larger, more complex organisms that use cooperation among their cells to survive. One of the biggest steps in this journey happened when certain cells began to communicate with one another more clearly. Chemical signals allowed cells to send messages, telling each other when to divide, when to stop dividing, when to form new shapes, or when to repair damage. This communication system created the first organized structures that would later become tissues. With tissues, the multicellular organism could build stronger bodies, protect itself better, store nutrients, and move with more control. The oceans of Earth during this time were full of warm currents, mineral-rich waters, and sunlight filtering down through the surface. Countless microscopic organisms drifted in the depths, fighting to survive in a world that was still relatively harsh. Many of the early multicellular forms remained small, some no larger than a grain of sand. But their bodies contained multiple layers of cells working together, something that single-celled life had never achieved. Eventually, more recognizable multicellular organisms began to appear. These included early algae with many cells arranged in long strands, soft-bodied forms that attached themselves to rocks, and more complex shapes floating freely. These early multicellular algae may have paved the way for later plants, although they were still simple compared to what billions of years later would stand tall on land. About 630 million years ago, during a period known for massive ice ages covering large parts of the world, multicellular creatures began to take a leap forward. These early organisms lived in the oceans, where the water offered protection against extreme temperatures. After the great ice ages began to fade, a new explosion of life followed. Warmer climates and greater amounts of oxygen in the oceans encouraged rapid changes in evolution. This period saw the appearance of the first truly complex multicellular creatures, ones that developed organized body plans, internal structures, and new ways of moving and surviving. These organisms are often linked with the famous Ediacaran period, a time when strange, soft-bodied creatures lived on the seafloor. Fossils from this time include flat, leaf-like animals, disc-shaped organisms, and long, worm-like bodies that moved slowly across the ocean bottom. Some of these beings had no mouths, no eyes, and no hard parts. They absorbed nutrients directly through their skin or from the surrounding water. They were unlike anything alive today, but they represented an important step because they were among the first animals made up of many cells working together as a single creature. In these early stages of multicellular life, diversity increased rapidly. Different kinds of creatures began to appear in different parts of the oceans. Some floated freely, while others stayed attached to the seafloor. Some grew larger to compete for space or sunlight. Others developed new shapes to capture nutrients or avoid danger. The rise of multicellular life created an evolutionary spark that encouraged living organisms to explore every possible survival strategy. A key moment in the rise of complex life came when creatures began to develop symmetry in their body plans. Having a symmetrical body meant that organisms could move more efficiently and grow in balanced shapes. Some had radial symmetry, where their bodies were arranged in circles somewhat like modern jellyfish or sea stars. Others began to form bilateral symmetry, where the body could be divided into two matching halves. Bilateral symmetry is especially important because it eventually allowed the development of a head, a tail, and directed movement, which opened the door for more advanced behaviors. The move toward bilateral symmetry set the stage for dramatic evolutionary changes. When an organism has a front and back, it can choose a direction to move, and the cells at the front can develop into sensory structures for detecting food, danger, light, or movement. This simple shift eventually led to the development of early brains, nerves, and muscles, features that would become essential for complex animals millions of years later. Around 540 million years ago, a major event in the history of life began, a powerful evolutionary burst often called the Cambrian explosion. During this period, which lasted only several tens of millions of years, life on Earth transformed more dramatically than in all the time before. The ocean suddenly became filled with multicellular animals of many shapes and sizes. Some had hard shells, others had limbs, and many developed eyes, jaws, and new ways of moving. Creatures with segmented bodies, such as early arthropods, crawled across the seafloor, while others swam through the water with surprising speed. Although the Cambrian explosion happened long after the first multicellular organisms appeared, it would not have been possible without all the earlier steps that allowed cells to work together, specialize, and communicate. The early multicellular forms set the foundation for what became a vast burst of innovation in animal life. Before this explosion, life remained relatively simple. After it, the oceans became home to predators, prey, complex food chains, and creatures capable of changing their surroundings. In the centuries of Earth's history leading up to this explosion, animals began developing hard body parts for the first time. These parts, such as shells and exoskeletons, offered protection from predators and allowed animals to grow larger than before. Hard parts also preserved better as fossils, giving modern scientists a clearer picture of what life looked like during this period. Creatures like early trilobites developed segmented bodies and legs, allowing them to move across the ocean floor with speed and control. Other animals formed tube-shaped skeletons for structure, and some grew spines or plates for defense. Another important development that came from multicellular evolution was the creation of digestive systems. Early multicellular organisms may have absorbed nutrients from water, but more advanced creatures developed mouths, stomach-like cavities, and specialized cells for breaking down food. With this change, animals could eat larger food items, hunt other creatures, and gain more energy for growth and movement. The rise of multicellular creatures also brought the development of circulatory systems in some animals. Instead of simple diffusion of nutrients between cells, these systems transported food and oxygen throughout the body in an organized way. This allowed animals to grow larger and more complex. At the same time, sensory organs became more advanced. Simple light-sensitive patches eventually turned into eyes. Touch-sensitive cells evolved into nerves that helped creatures respond faster to danger or opportunity. Multicellularity also encouraged the rise of new reproductive strategies. Many early multicellular organisms reproduced by simply releasing spores or gametes into the water. As evolution continued, different creatures developed more advanced reproductive systems that allowed greater genetic variation. This variation helped many species adapt to environmental changes over millions of years, ensuring their survival. Some of the earliest complex multicellular organisms lived in huge reefs formed by layers of microbes. Later, multicellular animals began building coral-like structures, creating new habitats for many forms of life. These structures acted almost like underwater cities, with different species living in different layers. While the reefs of early Earth were very different from modern coral reefs, they served the same purpose, providing shelter, food, and complex ecosystems where animals interacted in countless ways. As multicellular life evolved, creatures developed new types of movement. Some crawled with simple muscular waves, others used tiny hair-like structures to glide through the water, and some developed fins or limb-like structures that powered them forward. Movement allowed animals to explore larger areas, escape predators, and search for food in new environments. One of the most important aspects of multicellularity was the rise of cooperation within organisms. Cells no longer lived only for themselves. Instead, they committed to working as part of a larger being. This required cells to follow strict rules. Some would never reproduce, some would sacrifice themselves to protect the organism, and others would dedicate their lives to building tissues or supporting structures. This deep cooperation laid the foundation for animals with organs, nervous systems, skeletons, and even behaviors that showed problem-solving or planning. Even though early multicellular creatures were extremely simple compared to animals alive today, they represented the beginning of biological complexity. Without them, there would be no fish, no insects, no mammals, no birds, and no humans. Every complex form of life that exists today traces its ancestry back to those first organisms that made the leap from single cells to many cells working together. One of the major puzzles for scientists is understanding why multicellularity evolved multiple times. It did not arise from only one ancestor. Instead, different groups of organisms created multicellular structures independently. This happened in algae, fungi, animals, and other groups. The fact that multicellularity evolved several times suggests that it offered powerful survival advantages. Whenever conditions were right, such as increased oxygen, new sources of nutrients, or new predators, organisms found cooperation useful. Cells that could stick together had advantages in size, protection, and hunting. Over millions of years, multicellular organisms became increasingly diverse. Some developed long, thread-like bodies that could reach into the water for resources. Others grew into rounded shapes ideal for rolling or drifting. Some inflated their bodies with water to become larger when threatened. Others formed colonies where each member played a specific role. This wide range of shapes and strategies led to the incredible diversity of life seen in later periods of Earth's history. The move from simple multicellular organisms to fully complex animals involved many evolutionary innovations. One major step was the development of germ cells, cells set aside for reproduction. This allowed the body to grow without risking damage to the genetic information passed to the next generation. Another key step was programmed cell death, a system where certain cells deliberately self-destruct for the benefit of the organism. This allowed for the shaping of limbs, the removal of damaged cells, and the formation of complex structures. As multicellular organisms became more advanced, they developed body cavities that allowed internal organs to form. These cavities protected delicate organs and gave them space to function. Early worms and similar creatures showed these developments, marking another phase in the rise of complex life. During the long rise of multicellularity, evolution often took leaps forward, triggered by environmental changes. When oxygen levels rose, organisms developed more energy-demanding structures. When predators appeared, prey species evolved defenses like shells, spikes, or the ability to burrow quickly. When new food sources emerged, animals developed new feeding strategies. These pressures and opportunities created an environment filled with constant change, pushing multicellular life toward greater complexity. The earliest animals with neurons began forming simple nerve nets that allowed them to detect touch, movement, or changes in water pressure. These primitive nervous systems helped organisms coordinate movement and respond quickly. Over time, nerve nets evolved into more centralized systems, forming clusters of nerve cells that acted like early brains. These clusters allowed creatures to make faster decisions, pursue food, avoid predators, and explore their surroundings with more control. As complexity increased, animals began shaping the environment around them. Some burrowed into the seafloor, mixing the sediment and changing the chemistry of the ocean bottom. This activity allowed oxygen to reach deeper layers, changing habitats for other creatures. Some grazed on microbial mats, clearing space for new types of growth. In this way, multicellular creatures not only adapted to the environment, but also helped create new environments. The rise of multicellular organisms eventually led to creatures that fed on one another. Early predators appeared, equipped with gripping limbs, sharp mouth parts, or fast movement. These predators created pressure on prey species to evolve better defenses. This predator-prey cycle became one of the driving forces behind rapid evolutionary change during later periods. Many soft-bodied organisms living hundreds of millions of years ago left behind only faint traces in ancient rocks. Yet even these small traces reveal the beginnings of segmented bodies, muscular systems, and patterns of movement that suggest increasing complexity. Some early animals developed the ability to sense chemicals in the water, helping them find food or mates. Others formed simple eye spots that detected light and darkness. These early sensory systems were critical for survival in the growing complexity of ancient oceans. Eventually, multicellularity also gave rise to the ancestors of plants. Early multicellular algae evolved ways to capture sunlight more efficiently, store energy, and grow larger structures. These organisms provided oxygen and food for countless others in the water, contributing to the expanding web of life. Without their contribution, many other creatures would not have survived. The transition from simple multicellular organisms to large, complex life took enormous lengths of time, far greater than anything humans can easily understand. Billions of years passed between the first single-celled organisms and the appearance of animals with specialized tissues. But every small step mattered. Every improvement in cooperation, communication, growth, or specialization led to new forms of life. As evolution continued, some advanced multicellular organisms began experimenting with skeletons. At first, these skeletons were external, forming protective shells. Later, internal skeletons appeared, giving animals new ways to move, grow, and support their bodies. The development of bones, cartilage, and other supportive tissues allowed animals to reach sizes far greater than any earlier creatures. Through countless generations, multicellular life became deeply woven into the cycles of Earth's environment. Organisms influenced the chemistry of the oceans, the oxygen in the atmosphere, and even the temperature of the planet. In turn, Earth's changing conditions influenced which life forms survived or died out. This relationship between life and the planet continues even today. The rise of multicellular creatures also introduced new patterns of behavior. Simple organisms responded to their surroundings mostly by instinct. But as nervous systems became more advanced, animals developed behaviors such as seeking mates, caring for offspring, hiding from predators, and competing for territory. These behaviours led to increasingly complex interactions among species. Through all of these changes, the foundation of multicellular life remained the same: cooperation among cells, communication within the body, and specialization of tasks. These principles allowed organisms to grow from tiny clusters of cells into creatures with muscles, nerves, eyes, organs, and complex behaviors. When observing the long history of multicellularity, it becomes clear that this change from single-celled existence to complex organisms was one of the most important turning points in the history of Earth. It opened the path for animals, plants, fungi, and many other life forms that now fill the world's oceans, forests, deserts, and skies. The story continues far beyond the early multicellular organisms, but the most important steps were taken in those ancient oceans, when tiny cells joined together, learned to communicate, and formed bodies far greater than the sum of their parts. Through struggle, adaptation, mutation, and cooperation, life transformed the planet into a place filled with movement, colour, complexity, and endless diversity. Every living creature on Earth today carries within it the history of that long rise toward multicellularity, a journey that began billions of years ago with small organisms drifting through ancient seas. This immense process of evolution did not happen smoothly. There were moments when life thrived and moments when it nearly disappeared. Ice ages came and went, oceans rose and fell, volcanoes erupted, covering the sky with ash. Meteor impacts created harsh conditions that wiped out large populations, yet each time life found a way to continue. The cooperative systems that multicellularity created gave organisms new strengths that helped them survive even the harshest moments in Earth's long history. As multicellular organisms spread throughout the oceans, they formed new roles in the environment. Some became filter feeders, cleaning water as they ate tiny particles. Others became scavengers, feeding on dead organic material. Some became fast swimmers, hunting smaller creatures, while others stayed attached to the seafloor, slowly absorbing nutrients. This variety created the earliest ecosystems seen on the planet, complex webs of life where every creature depended on others in some way. Over time, multicellular organisms expanded into every available space in the oceans. They lived on rocks, in soft sediments, within coral-like reefs, near volcanic vents, and in the deepest parts of the sea. They developed protective chemicals, bright colours, and behaviours that helped them attract mates or scare away predators. The creation of pigments allowed early creatures to sense light more clearly or signal danger. Some grew soft tentacles to capture food, others evolved flat shapes to glide through the water. One of the most fascinating parts of multicellular evolution is how organisms solved the problem of shape. Single-celled organisms usually had simple shapes, dictated by the need to stay small. But multicellularity allowed bodies to stretch, grow, twist, and develop complex patterns. Some early animals grew into tube-like shapes with openings at each end. Others formed branched structures. Some became discs, spheres, or spirals. These shapes affected how they moved, how they fed, and how they interacted with their surroundings. The development of a mouth and digestive system allowed animals to eat larger and more nutritious food. This created a world where animals competed for the same resources, leading to rapid changes in body design. Some evolved hard jaws, others long proboscises, and some developed filtering mechanisms nearly identical to those used by certain modern animals. This new world of feeding strategies increased the pressure to evolve, pushing organisms toward greater innovation. As multicellular life grew more complex, it also became increasingly efficient at using energy. Respiration systems developed that allowed oxygen to spread through the body faster, supporting more active movement. Muscles strengthened, skeletons allowed support and better leverage. Nervous systems became faster at sending signals. In time, these ancient multicellular creatures laid the foundation for the earliest fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, though those would appear much later. But the first steps toward that future occurred during the rise of multicellular organisms, when life stopped being limited to single cells and started forming structures capable of remarkable complexity. Over 500 million years ago, something extraordinary happened in the oceans that changed the story of life forever. Around 540 million years ago, the seas, which had for hundreds of millions of years been home mostly to tiny, simple, single-celled creatures, suddenly became filled with a bewildering variety of complex animals. This event, now called the Cambrian explosion, was not a slow, gradual change. Instead, it was a rapid, almost explosive appearance of an incredible number of life forms, many of which were completely new to the Earth. Creatures developed eyes, skeletons, legs, and intricate body structures. For the first time, the world saw animals with specialized body parts, each designed for a particular role, whether hunting, hiding, or filtering food from the water. The oceans of this time were like nothing we see today. They were warm, shallow, and teeming with nutrients, providing the perfect environment for life to grow in ways it had never grown before. Tiny microorganisms had been busy for billions of years producing oxygen and preparing the seas for more complicated organisms. By the time of the Cambrian period, the chemical and physical conditions of the oceans had reached a point where life could take giant leaps forward. The simplest life forms, which had survived in relative simplicity for so long, suddenly gave rise to creatures with hard shells, spines, and segmented bodies, animals that could move, hunt, and even defend themselves. One of the most remarkable aspects of this explosion of life was the diversity of body plans that appeared. Scientists use the term phyla to describe major groups of animals, and during the Cambrian explosion, almost all of the animal phyla we know today emerged. This includes groups like arthropods, which have jointed legs and exoskeletons, and early relatives of mollusks and worms. Some of these creatures had body armor, spikes, or even primitive eyes capable of detecting light and movement, a revolutionary step in the evolution of sight. Others developed limbs that allowed them to swim actively or crawl along the seafloor, which created entirely new ways of finding food and avoiding predators. Fossil evidence from this period is extraordinary and provides a window into a world that existed over 500 million years ago. Sites like the Burgess Shale in Canada have preserved hundreds of different species, capturing delicate, soft parts of animals that normally would have decayed. These fossils reveal creatures that look almost alien, with bodies unlike anything alive today. Some had long, segmented bodies with legs on almost every segment. Others had large, shield-like heads with rows of teeth or grasping appendages. There were also early forms of sponges and worms, each contributing to the complex ecosystems of the Cambrian seas. The speed at which this diversity appeared is one of the most puzzling mysteries of biology. For billions of years, life had remained relatively simple, but in a period of just about 20 to 25 million years, a wide variety of complex animals appeared. This rapid emergence suggests that the conditions on Earth had reached a tipping point. Changes in the chemistry of the oceans, increases in oxygen levels, and perhaps even the evolution of predation created a feedback loop, encouraging creatures to evolve quickly. The presence of predators, for example, likely drove the development of hard shells, spikes, and faster movement, while prey species developed strategies to hide, burrow, or swim more efficiently. Among the most famous Cambrian creatures is Anomalocaris, a large predatory animal that could reach almost a meter in length. It had huge compound eyes, spiny grasping appendages, and a circular mouth lined with sharp plates, a design unlike anything that existed before. Its presence indicates a complex food chain, where predators and prey co-evolved rapidly. Another remarkable animal is Opabenia, with 5 eyes on stalks and a long, flexible proboscis used to grab food. These creatures highlight just how experimental life became during this time, trying out body forms and behaviors that would later either disappear or evolve into modern lineages. The Cambrian explosion also marks the first time animals developed hard parts like shells and exoskeletons that could fossilize, leaving a clear record for scientists to study. Before this, life was mostly soft-bodied, leaving only traces like microbial mats or chemical signatures in rocks. The appearance of skeletons not only offered protection but also allowed for greater complexity in size and shape, giving animals the freedom to explore new ways of living. Some animals burrowed into the sediment, while others swam above the seabed, creating diverse habitats and interactions that never existed before. The Cambrian seas were not uniform everywhere. Different regions hosted different combinations of animals, suggesting that local environmental factors played a role in shaping the evolution of life. Variations in temperature, ocean chemistry, and nutrient availability likely influenced which body plans were successful in a given area. This patchwork of ecosystems, combined with the rapid experimentation in form and function, produced an almost unimaginable richness of life in a relatively short span of geological time. Some of the creatures of the Cambrian period are truly astonishing. Hallucigenia, for example, had a tubular body with spines along its back and soft tentacle-like limbs below. For decades, scientists debated how it lived and even which side was its top. Wiwaxia was covered in scales and spines, like an armoured worm, moving along the seafloor to graze on microbial mats. Each fossil tells a story of experimentation and adaptation, revealing a world in which life was testing countless strategies for survival and reproduction. The Cambrian explosion also laid the foundation for future animal evolution. Many of the features that first appeared then, such as segmented bodies, eyes, appendages, and exoskeletons, became standard in later groups of animals. The innovations of this period provided a toolkit that life could continue to build upon for hundreds of millions of years. Essentially, the Cambrian explosion created a template for the modern animal kingdom, even if many of the species themselves did not survive. The changes in the oceans were accompanied by shifts in the atmosphere and climate. Oxygen levels increased enough to support larger, more active animals, and the chemistry of seawater favoured the formation of calcium carbonate, which animals used to build shells and skeletons. The combination of oxygen, nutrients, and mineral availability acted like a set of keys unlocking a new potential for life. The interplay between environmental conditions and genetic innovation created a period of unparalleled creativity in the natural world. Fossilized burrows and trace fossils from the Cambrian period also show that animals were becoming more interactive with their environment. Worms and other bottom-dwelling creatures dug tunnels and disturbed sediments, aerating the seafloor and changing the distribution of nutrients. This behavior in turn influenced other organisms, creating a dynamic and interconnected ecosystem. These early ecological interactions are a reminder that life did not evolve in isolation, but in a web of relationships, even during this early stage of complexity. The evolution of eyes was another transformative development during the Cambrian explosion. Compound eyes appeared in many arthropods, giving them the ability to detect motion, direction, and even rudimentary images. This revolutionary adaptation changed the nature of predator-prey relationships. Creatures could now see danger coming and respond with movement or camouflage. The emergence of vision may have accelerated evolutionary arms races, encouraging faster movement, better defences, and more complex behaviours. It is important to note that not all Cambrian creatures had modern counterparts. Many of the body plans that appeared during this period went extinct, leaving no descendants. This suggests that the Cambrian explosion was a time of both innovation and experimentation, a natural laboratory in which countless forms were tried, and only some survived to influence future generations. The sheer variety of extinct lineages shows how unpredictable evolution can be when life is free to explore new possibilities. Fossil beds around the world provide a rich record of this period, from North America to China, Australia, and Siberia. Each site offers a slightly different perspective on the Cambrian seas, revealing new species and ecological relationships. These discoveries have been critical in understanding how life diversified so rapidly and why the Cambrian explosion remains one of the most fascinating events in Earth's history. The sudden appearance of complex life forms also raises intriguing questions about the pace of evolution. While traditional models often emphasize slow, gradual change, the Cambrian explosion demonstrates that under the right conditions, evolutionary innovation can occur rapidly. This period challenges scientists to understand the mechanisms that drive bursts of creativity in life, and how environmental, genetic, and ecological factors interact to produce such dramatic results. Even tiny creatures played an important role in the Cambrian ecosystems. Microorganisms formed the base of the food web, providing sustenance for grazing animals and filter feeders. Bacterial mats, algae, and plankton were abundant, creating a nutrient-rich environment that supported more complex life. The interactions between these small organisms and the newly evolved animals created a balance that allowed ecosystems to flourish in new and varied ways. Predation, mobility, and hard body parts were central to many evolutionary changes. As some animals became hunters, others evolved defenses like shells, spikes, or burrowing habits. Some moved from the seafloor into open water, while others developed specialized appendages for grabbing, filtering, or scraping food. Each adaptation opened new ecological niches, increasing diversity further. The Cambrian explosion was not just about new species appearing, it was about new ways of life emerging and creating an intricate web of interactions. This period also laid the groundwork for evolutionary experimentation that would continue through the Ordovician, Silurian, and Devonian periods. Many of the Cambrian innovations, such as jointed limbs, eyes, and skeletons, were refined in later periods, giving rise to more specialized and advanced animals. Essentially, the Cambrian explosion was the dawn of a biological era when the foundations for almost all future animal life were established. Scientists continue to study the Cambrian explosion to understand the causes of such a dramatic transformation. Fossils, chemical signatures, and even molecular evidence from modern animals provide clues, but many questions remain unanswered. How did life remain so simple for so long and then suddenly become so complex? What triggered the first eyes, the first shells, and the first predators? These mysteries make the Cambrian explosion an enduring focus of research and fascination. The period was marked by both innovation and risk. Many species that emerged during the Cambrian went extinct relatively quickly, demonstrating that rapid change comes with instability. Yet, the survivors provided the building blocks for life as we know it today. Evolution during this time was like a massive experiment, with countless trial and error outcomes leading to the incredible diversity of forms that shaped the future of life on Earth. The Cambrian explosion also highlights the interconnectedness of life and environment. Changes in ocean chemistry, climate, and oxygen levels, combined with genetic potential, created a perfect storm for evolutionary creativity. Life did not advance in isolation. It responded to opportunities, challenges, and pressures in a dynamic, interactive world. Each adaptation, whether a shell, limb, or eye, was a step in a complex dance between organism and environment, survival and innovation. Many Cambrian creatures were extraordinary in their appearance and function. Some had protective shells and spines, while others developed long, flexible limbs for grasping or swimming. Others, like Pikaia, are considered early ancestors of vertebrates, possessing a notochord, a structure that would later evolve into a backbone. The appearance of such animals marks the beginnings of the complex lineages that would eventually include fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. During the Cambrian period, evolutionary experimentation was at its peak. Different body forms, feeding strategies, and modes of locomotion were explored. Some animals became tiny and fast-moving, others grew larger with strong armor. Many developed unique adaptations to exploit specific niches in the ocean. This diversity of life was a natural response to competition, predation, and the abundance of resources, demonstrating how opportunity and challenge drive innovation in evolution. Even though the Cambrian explosion occurred hundreds of millions of years ago, its legacy is visible in the structure and diversity of modern life. Features that first appeared in this period, such as segmented bodies, exoskeletons, and compound eyes, continue to define major groups of animals today. The Cambrian was not just a moment in time, it was a transformative chapter that set the stage for billions of years of biological development, shaping the trajectory of life in ways that continue to influence the world. Some of the soft-bodied animals, preserved in exceptional fossil sites, show unexpected complexity. Creatures like Wiwaxia, Hallucigenia, and Opabinia reveal that even seemingly strange or alien forms were experimenting with survival strategies. These fossils demonstrate that evolution is not always straightforward, and many lineages explored directions that were ultimately unsuccessful, leaving no modern descendants. Yet, each of these creatures played a role in the dynamic ecosystems of the Cambrian seas. The Cambrian explosion represents a unique period in Earth's history when life discovered the potential for complexity on a massive scale. From tiny grazers to large predators, from soft-bodied worms to heavily armoured arthropods, the seas were alive with experimentation. Every new adaptation, whether for movement, defence, or sensing the environment, added a new dimension to life and allowed animals to exploit niches that had previously been unavailable. Even today, scientists marvel at how quickly this diversification occurred. The explosion shows that evolution can be both sudden and dramatic, with life capable of creating remarkable innovations when conditions are right. The Cambrian seas were a laboratory of evolution, a stage on which life could test countless strategies, some of which would leave lasting legacies and some of which would disappear forever. The ecological interactions during the Cambrian were also groundbreaking. Predation, grazing, burrowing, and scavenging behaviors shaped communities, creating complex food webs. Animals competed for space, food, and survival, driving further innovation. The emergence of vision and mobility transformed relationships between species, creating a dynamic and constantly changing ecosystem. Overall, the Cambrian explosion represents one of the most extraordinary chapters in the history of life. In a relatively short span of time, the oceans transformed from simple microbial worlds to bustling seas filled with complex, mobile, and diverse animals. The innovations of this period, hard shells, segmented bodies, eyes, limbs, and specialized appendages, provided the tools for further evolutionary success. It is a period of experimentation, diversity, and transformation, showing life at one of its most creative and intense stages, setting the stage for the intricate ecosystems that would follow. The fossils, trace evidence, and chemical clues from the Cambrian period continue to fascinate scientists and the public alike. Each discovery adds to our understanding of how life evolves, adapts, and interacts with its environment. The Cambrian explosion is more than just a historical event. It is a reminder of the creative power of evolution, the resilience of life, and the remarkable complexity that can emerge from even the simplest beginnings. This period also demonstrates the importance of ecological opportunity. With new niches available in the oceans, animals could exploit resources in innovative ways. Some became filter feeders, others hunters, some grazers, and others scavengers. The explosion of life created a diverse and balanced ecosystem, where every new adaptation influenced the evolution of other species. The feedback loops between predator and prey, between environment and organism, were critical in shaping the future trajectory of life. The Cambrian explosion ultimately set a foundation for all future animal life. Many of the fundamental body plans and ecological strategies we see today first appeared during this period. Even though some of the creatures disappeared, their evolutionary experiments provided the blueprint for survival and adaptation. The appearance of vision, mobility, armor, and specialized appendages illustrates how life rapidly expanded its toolkit to meet challenges, explore opportunities, and create complex communities. The sheer variety of forms during the Cambrian also emphasizes that evolution is not a straight path, but a branching, experimental process. Multiple strategies were tested simultaneously, some successful, some not. Some animals were small and fast, others large and slow, some armored, others soft-bodied. Each species interacted with its environment and with other species, creating a dynamic and ever-changing web of life. Even today, paleontologists study the Burgess Shale, Chengjiang, and other fossil sites to uncover new species and learn about the Cambrian oceans. Each fossil provides insight into how life evolved, adapted, and diversified during this crucial period. By examining these ancient creatures, scientists can reconstruct the food webs, behaviors, and environmental pressures that drove one of the most remarkable evolutionary events in history. The Cambrian explosion reminds us that evolution can produce sudden bursts of diversity when conditions are right. It challenges the notion that progress must be slow and gradual, showing that life can rapidly explore new forms and functions. The combination of environmental change, genetic potential, and ecological interactions created a perfect storm for evolutionary innovation, allowing animals to explore new body plans, behaviors, and ecological roles. During this time, the oceans were filled with creatures experimenting with life in unprecedented ways. Some had shells and spines for protection, some developed limbs for movement or grasping, and some even evolved sensory organs to detect light and movement. These adaptations created a dynamic, interactive world in which survival required creativity, speed, and responsiveness. The Cambrian explosion also demonstrates how evolutionary innovations can ripple through ecosystems. The appearance of predators, for example, forced prey species to adapt in turn, developing defenses and strategies for survival. Similarly, the development of mobility allowed animals to explore new habitats and access previously untapped resources. Each innovation influenced others, creating a cascading effect that increased diversity and complexity throughout the seas. Even the smallest adaptations, like changes in limb structure or feeding appendages, could have significant impacts on survival. The variety of body plans and ecological strategies highlights the importance of experimentation in evolution. Over time, the successful adaptations became the foundation for future lineages. influencing the course of life for hundreds of millions of years. The Cambrian explosion also provides insight into the relationship between environmental change and biological innovation. Rising oxygen levels, shifts in ocean chemistry, and increased nutrient availability created opportunities for larger, more active animals. These conditions, combined with genetic potential, allowed life to experiment with new forms, behaviours, and ecological roles at an unprecedented pace. Predators, prey, and the evolving interactions between them drove much of the innovation during the Cambrian. Animals with better mobility, vision, or protective structures had advantages in survival and reproduction, encouraging further evolution. This arms race created a dynamic environment in which life was constantly adapting, competing, and exploring new possibilities. The fossil record from this period is a testament to the creativity of evolution. Every discovery, from armored worms to large predators, adds to our understanding of how life diversified. Fossils reveal not only the forms of animals but also their behaviours, interactions, and ecological roles. They tell a story of a world in which life rapidly expanded in complexity, developing new ways to move, feed, and survive. This period also emphasises that evolution is experimental. Many body plans and adaptations first appeared during the Cambrian but later disappeared, leaving no descendants. Yet these experiments were critical in shaping the trajectory of life, providing lessons and foundations for future evolutionary innovations. The Cambrian explosion shows that life is capable of remarkable creativity, trying countless strategies to see which will succeed. Life during the Cambrian was dynamic, diverse, and constantly changing. Predation, mobility, vision, and protective structures drove evolutionary innovation, creating a complex web of interactions. The emergence of different body plans, feeding strategies, and ecological roles demonstrates how opportunity, challenge, and environmental conditions shape the course of life. For the first 2 billion years of Earth's history, life existed only in water, hidden in oceans, lakes, and rivers, where the surrounding liquid provided support, nutrients, and protection. Cells floated in primordial seas, evolving slowly, creating more complex forms, yet the land remained barren, a hostile world of dry surfaces, fluctuating temperatures, and intense sunlight. Somehow, against these odds, the first pioneers began to venture onto solid ground, laying the foundation for a completely new way of living that would eventually cover the entire planet. The first step in this terrestrial conquest came with plants. Around 550 million years ago, in the late Cambrian and early Ordovician periods, tiny, simple organisms resembling mosses or liverworts began to colonize wet areas at the edges of ponds and streams. These early land plants were very small, lacking roots or true leaves, often just clumps of cells clinging to moist soil or rocks. Their structure was fragile, and they relied heavily on water to survive. But even in this limited form, they were monumental pioneers. Over millions of years, these simple plants developed adaptations that allowed them to draw water and nutrients from the soil, grow upright to reach sunlight, and reproduce without returning to water. The evolution of vascular tissues, which acted like tiny pipelines for water and nutrients, allowed plants to grow taller and spread further inland. By around 480 million years ago, during the Silurian period, some plants had developed primitive leaves, stems, and root-like structures, allowing them to colonize land more effectively. Mosses, liverworts, and early relatives of ferns and club mosses carpeted the landscape, creating the first green expanses outside the oceans. As plants spread across the land, they transformed the environment, making it more suitable for other forms of life. The development of soils, created by decaying plant matter mixing with rock, provided nutrients and shelter for organisms that had never before existed outside water. These tiny ecosystems became the first stepping stones for animals to follow. Insects, among the first land-dwelling animals, emerged around 410 million years ago in the Devonian period. Early insects were small, wingless creatures, resembling modern springtails or silverfish, adapted to live among the mosses and leaf litter. They could exploit food sources unavailable in water, feeding on decaying plant material or the tiny microorganisms that thrived in moist soils. Their small size and protective exoskeletons helped them retain moisture, a critical adaptation in the dry terrestrial environment. Over time, insects evolved wings, allowing them to move freely between habitats, escape predators, and colonize new territories, a development that would eventually lead to the astonishing diversity of species seen today. Around the same time, other invertebrates began venturing onto land. Early millipede-like arthropods appeared, some stretching several inches in length, with segmented bodies and many legs that allowed them to navigate the uneven terrain. They fed on decaying plant matter, fungi, and tiny organisms in the soil, playing an essential role in nutrient cycling and shaping the terrestrial ecosystem. Arachnids, the ancestors of spiders and scorpions, also appeared during this period, hunting small insects and other arthropods. Their development of exoskeletons, jointed legs, and specialized mouthparts enabled them to survive in the harsher, drier conditions away from water. These creatures established the first food chains on land, creating predator-prey relationships and interactions that would shape evolutionary paths for millions of years. Vertebrates were slower to make the transition. Fish dominated the Devonian seas, and some species began developing lungs and strong limb-like fins, adaptations that allowed them to survive brief excursions into shallow, oxygen-poor waters. Around 370 million years ago, in the late Devonian, a group of lobe-finned fish, known as Sarcopterygians, began exploring the land more permanently. They evolved sturdy, muscular fins that could support their bodies on solid ground, paired with lungs capable of breathing air directly. These pioneering fish, including the ancestors of modern amphibians, are often referred to as fishopods due to their transitional characteristics, blending aquatic and terrestrial features. Over time, they developed stronger skeletons, improved limb joints, and better sensory organs for detecting prey and avoiding predators in a new environment. By 360 million years ago, these early tetrapods had become fully adapted to life on land, able to move, feed, and reproduce without relying on water for survival. The expansion of terrestrial life created new opportunities and challenges. Plants provided shelter, shade, and food, while insects and other invertebrates offered prey for newly emerging land vertebrates. The atmosphere, rich in oxygen, supported larger bodies and more active lifestyles, but organisms had to cope with desiccation, ultraviolet radiation, and temperature fluctuations. Adaptations such as protective skin, scales, or cuticles, and reproductive strategies that reduced dependence on water were critical for survival. Amphibians retained close ties to water for reproduction, laying eggs in ponds or streams, while the evolution of amniotic eggs around 320 million years ago, in the Carboniferous period, allowed reptiles and their descendants to reproduce entirely on land, opening vast new habitats previously inaccessible. The Carboniferous period saw a remarkable explosion of life on land, fueled by warm, humid climates and abundant vegetation. Forests of towering lycophytes, horsetails, and ferns created dense canopies, while the undergrowth teemed with insects, spiders, and other arthropods. Giant millipedes, some reaching over 6 feet in length, crawled through the leaf litter, while early reptiles, amphibians, and other vertebrates explored the forests, rivers, and swamps. Insects diversified into hundreds of forms, including the earliest winged species, predators, herbivores, and scavengers. Their evolution dramatically reshaped terrestrial ecosystems, creating complex food webs and driving the evolution of other land animals. The presence of oxygen-rich atmospheres supported larger body sizes, and the diversity of plants provided a variety of ecological niches, from forest floors to treetops. By the Permian period, around 290 million years ago, land ecosystems had become incredibly diverse. Reptiles dominated many habitats, including the first mammal-like reptiles known as synapsids, which laid the groundwork for the eventual rise of mammals. Insects and arachnids continued to diversify, occupying every available niche, from tiny detritivores to formidable predators. Forests of seed ferns and conifers spread across the continents, providing food, shelter, and structural complexity. The interactions between plants, insects, and animals created feedback loops that drove evolutionary innovation. Pollination, herbivory, and predation became central ecological forces, shaping the morphology, behavior, and life cycles of countless species. The land, once barren and hostile, had transformed into a rich, interconnected web of life. Throughout this period, evolutionary pressures continued to push life toward greater complexity. Terrestrial plants developed seeds and protective coatings to survive dry periods, while fungi formed symbiotic relationships with roots, enhancing nutrient uptake. Insects evolved specialized mouthparts, wings, and behaviors to exploit specific plant resources, while amphibians and reptiles diversified into predators, herbivores, and omnivores. The interactions between these groups, plants providing food and shelter, insects aiding in reproduction and decomposition, vertebrates predating and dispersing seeds, created dynamic, co-evolving ecosystems that were increasingly resilient to environmental changes. Rivers, lakes, and wetlands remained important habitats, but land had become a viable home for life in ways that would forever alter the planet's surface and future. The transition of life from water to land was not sudden but gradual, occurring over tens of millions of years, with countless intermediate forms experimenting with different strategies. Some species returned to water, some remained tied to moist habitats, and some ventured into increasingly dry and challenging environments. This long process was shaped by climate, geography, competition, and chance events, resulting in the astonishing diversity of life forms that would populate Earth for the next hundreds of millions of years. The pioneering steps of plants, insects, and early land vertebrates laid the foundation for the ecosystems that dominate the planet today, establishing patterns of adaptation, interaction, and survival that continue to influence evolution. During the prehistoric times, there existed a world where the very air seemed heavier, denser, and more alive than what we know today. In this extraordinary era, the skies were filled with enormous insects that defied imagination. Dragonflies with wings spanning nearly 3 feet from tip to tip cut through the prehistoric air with grace, their delicate-looking yet powerful wings propelling them with speed and precision. Beetles the size of small dogs scuttled across the forest floors, and cockroaches bigger than a human hand crept along decaying tree trunks. These were not ordinary insects. They were colossal versions of the creatures we see today, living in a world that nurtured gigantism in astonishing ways. The sheer scale of these creatures would astound anyone who walked the land back then, and the reasons behind their enormous sizes reveal a fascinating tale of biology, environment, and evolution. During the period known as the Carboniferous, which lasted from approximately 359 million years ago to 299 million years ago, the atmosphere was vastly different from what it is today. Oxygen levels were far higher, reaching nearly 35%, compared to the 21% we breathe in modern times. This abundance of oxygen allowed insects to grow far larger than any we see today. Unlike vertebrates, insects do not have lungs in the way mammals do. Instead, they breathe through a network of tubes called tracheae, which carry oxygen directly to their tissues. The higher oxygen levels meant that these tracheae could supply much more oxygen to their bodies, allowing them to grow to sizes that would be impossible under the oxygen concentrations we have now. The very air of the Carboniferous period was a supercharged fuel that enabled these creatures to reach astonishing dimensions. One of the most famous of these giant insects was a dragonfly-like creature called Meganeura. This terrifying yet mesmerizing insect had a wingspan of almost 3 feet, large enough to carry it gracefully through the swampy forests of the time. Meganeura was a predator, feeding on other insects and perhaps even small amphibians. Its powerful jaws could snap up prey with precision, and its enormous wings allowed it to hover, dart, and chase with incredible agility. The sight of a Meganeura gliding silently through the air, wings glinting in the light, would have been both beautiful and intimidating, a glimpse into a world where the ordinary laws of size were pushed to extraordinary limits. But it was not just dragonflies that grew so large. Cockroaches, for example, reached lengths of nearly a foot, much bigger than the 2-inch insects we often struggle to ignore in our modern homes. Some beetles rivaled small mammals in size, with heavy exoskeletons providing protection while supporting their massive forms. The ancient forests were full of these giant arthropods, crawling, flying, and buzzing through dense vegetation that often reached towering heights, creating a labyrinthine world full of movement, sound, and life. The environment itself played a crucial role in supporting these giant insects. The Carboniferous period was a time of vast swampy forests, dominated by giant ferns, horsetails, and club mosses. Trees like Lepidodendron and Sigillaria grew to heights of over 100 feet, and the forest floors were layered with thick mats of decaying plant material. These humid, oxygen-rich swamps were perfect habitats for insects, providing endless food sources, shelter, and room to grow. The combination of dense vegetation, warm temperatures, and high oxygen created a kind of paradise for insects, a place where gigantism was not just possible, but advantageous. Predation and competition also influenced the size of these prehistoric insects. Larger size often provided protection, allowing insects to fend off predators or intimidate rivals. Insects like Meganeura, with their enormous wings and strong jaws, were apex predators in their own right. The same pressures that favoured large body size in insects, such as the need to hunt, avoid being eaten, and thrive in swampy competitive ecosystems, drove evolution toward ever larger forms. The physiology of insects also contributed to their ability to grow so large. Unlike vertebrates, insects have exoskeletons that support their bodies from the outside, allowing them to carry more weight without the constraints of internal skeletal structures. This, combined with high oxygen levels and abundant food sources, meant that insects could reach sizes that modern species cannot achieve. Today, the decrease in atmospheric oxygen and changes in ecosystems have placed limits on insect growth, which is why the bugs and dragonflies of the present day are much smaller and less formidable than their prehistoric ancestors. Fossils provide a remarkable window into this bygone world. Impressions of giant dragonfly wings, fossilized exoskeletons of massive beetles, and even traces of enormous cockroaches have been found in many parts of the world, from Europe to North America. These fossils show incredible detail, revealing the veins in dragonfly wings, the segments of insect legs, and the structure of their powerful mandibles. Paleontologists have been able to reconstruct not only the size but also the behavior of these ancient insects, showing how they hunted, moved, and interacted with their environment. Each fossil is a testament to the incredible diversity and scale of life during the Carboniferous period. The story of giant insects continues beyond the Carboniferous period. As the Earth's atmosphere gradually changed and oxygen levels dropped during the Permian period, roughly 299 million years ago to 252 million years ago, the age of the giants came to an end. Insects shrank to more manageable sizes, and vertebrates such as reptiles began to dominate the land. Yet, even as insect sizes decreased, they remained highly successful and adaptable, evolving into the incredible variety we see today, from delicate butterflies to formidable beetles, each carrying a legacy of the giants that once ruled the skies. The incredible size of prehistoric insects has fascinated scientists and the public alike for centuries. These creatures challenge our understanding of what is possible in nature, demonstrating that under the right conditions life can grow to astonishing dimensions. The combination of high oxygen, abundant resources, and evolutionary pressures created a world where dragonflies with wingspans of nearly 3 feet could patrol the skies. Cockroaches the size of small cats could scuttle along the forest floor, and beetles could rival small mammals in strength and presence. It is a world that seems almost fantastical, yet it is real, preserved in stone and fossilized imprints for millions of years. Even today, the study of these giant insects informs our understanding of biology, evolution, and the limits of life. Researchers investigate how high oxygen concentrations affect metabolism and growth, how exoskeleton structure supports massive bodies, and how ancient ecosystems allowed such creatures to thrive. By understanding the past, scientists gain insights into how life adapts to extreme conditions, which can even inform studies of modern insects, climate change, and future possibilities for life on Earth. The enormous dragonflies, beetles, and cockroaches of the Carboniferous period are not just relics of the past, they are lessons in resilience, adaptation, and the incredible diversity of life. The legacy of these giant insects continues in popular imagination as well. Stories, documentaries, and artwork depict the awe-inspiring sight of a 3-foot-wide dragonfly hovering above swampy forests, or a cockroach the size of a small dog scuttling through ferns that towered over human height. These images captivate our imagination, reminding us that the world of the past was sometimes stranger, larger, and more remarkable than anything we encounter today. The prehistoric age of giant insects is a testament to the incredible ways in which life can adapt, survive, and flourish under conditions very different from our modern world. Paleontological discoveries continue to reveal new species of giant insects, showing that our understanding of this era is far from complete. Every fossil discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, uncovering new forms, behaviours, and ecological roles. Some insects show evidence of predatory behaviour, while others appear to have fed on plants or decaying matter, painting a picture of complex ecosystems full of interaction, competition, and cooperation. These insights help scientists understand not only the biology of individual species, but also the dynamics of entire prehistoric ecosystems. The flight of giant dragonflies like Meganeura was an engineering marvel. Their wings, although delicate in appearance, were structured to withstand the forces of large-scale movement through the dense air of the Carboniferous. The veins running through the wings provided both strength and flexibility, allowing these enormous insects to maneuver with incredible agility. Observing how these wings were adapted to the conditions of the time gives scientists a glimpse into the principles of aerodynamics and evolution that applied hundreds of millions of years ago, principles that remain relevant for understanding flight in modern species and even for designing human technology inspired by nature. Predation pressures shaped not only size but also behaviour and anatomy. Giant insects often had formidable jaws, sharp mandibles, and strong limbs to capture prey or defend themselves. Some were able to grasp, crush, or pierce, adapting to the variety of food sources available in their rich ecosystems. Others relied on speed and flight to catch smaller prey, demonstrating a diversity of strategies for survival. The ecological niches filled by these insects were incredibly complex, showing how life, even in the distant past, was organized into webs of interaction that sustained entire ecosystems. High oxygen levels did more than just allow insects to grow, they influenced every aspect of life. The metabolism of giant insects was fueled by the abundant oxygen, giving them energy to hunt, fly, and reproduce at scales impossible today. The dense forests and warm climates provided protection and resources, creating a feedback loop that supported gigantism. When oxygen levels eventually dropped, this loop was broken and insect sizes decreased, showing how intimately life is connected to the environment and how changes in atmospheric conditions can reshape entire communities of organisms. In addition to oxygen and predation, reproduction played a role in the evolution of size. Large body size could mean more eggs, greater survival of offspring, and more dominance in mating competitions. Insects evolved strategies to maximize reproductive success, from laying eggs in protective environments to developing behaviors that ensured their young would survive. The combination of environmental opportunity, biological potential, and evolutionary pressure drove the existence of these enormous creatures, leaving a fossil record that continues to awe and intrigue scientists and the public alike. Some of the largest cockroaches, for example, had bodies over a foot long and legs spanning several inches, capable of moving quickly through thick undergrowth. Their antennae were long and sensitive, helping them navigate dense vegetation and locate food or mates. These cockroaches were not just survivors, they were dominant players in their ecosystems, consuming decaying matter and contributing to nutrient cycling, much like insects do today, but on a scale far larger. Even the behaviour of these giant insects has been inferred from fossil evidence. Wing impressions show flight patterns, leg structure indicates climbing and grasping abilities, and mouthparts reveal feeding strategies. The meticulous study of these fossils allows scientists to reconstruct the lives of creatures that lived hundreds of millions of years ago with remarkable detail. Each fossil is a story frozen in time, telling us not only about the species themselves, but also about the environment, climate, and evolutionary pressures of the era. The extinction of the giants was a consequence of changing environmental conditions. As oxygen levels declined, the delicate balance that allowed gigantism collapsed. Smaller, more adaptable insects took over, evolving into the myriad forms that populate the planet today. Yet, even in their smaller forms, insects retained the lessons of the past: efficiency, adaptability, and resilience. The giants may be gone, but their influence persists in the evolutionary strategies of modern insects, showing how past conditions shape present biodiversity. Giant insects were also a bridge between the simple life forms of earlier eras and the more complex ecosystems that would come later. By dominating the Carboniferous forests, they played key roles in shaping vegetation, competing for resources, and influencing the evolution of other species. Amphibians, early reptiles, and other animals interacted with these insects, either as predators, prey, or competitors, creating intricate webs of ecological interaction that set the stage for the future evolution of life on land. Studying giant insects also provides a window into the concept of maximum size in biology. Insects are limited by their mode of respiration, so the high oxygen levels of the Carboniferous period temporarily allowed them to break through these natural limits. This teaches scientists about the constraints of biology and how environmental factors can stretch or compress these limits. It also sparks imagination about the kinds of life that might evolve under different conditions, whether on Earth in the distant past or on other planets with varying atmospheres. The fascination with giant insects extends to culture and science fiction as well. Movies, books, and artwork often feature enormous insects, inspired directly by the likes of Meganeura and giant cockroaches. These creatures capture our fear and admiration, symbolizing a world where nature can defy expectations and overwhelm ordinary human experience. They remind us of the power and unpredictability of the natural world and the incredible variety that life can achieve under the right circumstances. Even today, entomologists study living insects to understand principles revealed by these ancient giants. Observing how tracheal systems, exoskeleton strength, and metabolic rates scale with size provides insights into limits of physiology and adaptation. Comparative studies between modern dragonflies and fossil Meganeura reveal how similar structures function differently at different scales, offering lessons that extend from evolutionary biology to engineering and aerodynamics. The ancient forests themselves were theatres for these giants. Towering trees, dense undergrowth, and swampy ground created a three-dimensional environment where flight, climbing, and crawling each played a role in survival. Dragonflies patrolled the skies, cockroaches navigated the forest floor, and beetles moved between plants, creating dynamic interactions that shaped every aspect of life. The Carboniferous world was a place of movement, energy, and complexity, where insects of astonishing size were key players in an ecological drama that unfolded over millions of years. Dinosaurs were the rulers of Earth for an unimaginably long stretch of time, stretching across more than 165 million years, a period so vast that it makes the existence of humans seem like a fleeting instant in comparison. Their reign began during a time called the Triassic period, roughly 230 million years ago, when the world was dramatically different from what we know today. The continents were not separate as they are now. Instead, they were merged into a massive supercontinent called Pangaea. The climate was generally hotter, with little polar ice and huge deserts in the interior of the landmass, while swamps and river systems ran through the edges of Pangaea. In these conditions, early dinosaurs started to appear, small and agile creatures that had to compete for survival with other reptiles, including crocodile-like predators and mammal-like reptiles that were also evolving alongside them. These early dinosaurs were not the enormous giants that later periods would produce. They were generally small, some only the size of a dog or a large turkey, and their survival depended on speed, intelligence, and adaptability. Over time, however, they began to diversify rapidly, a process that would continue throughout the Mesozoic era, which includes the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. During the Triassic, many types of dinosaurs evolved, from meat-eaters that hunted other reptiles to plant-eaters that browsed on the early conifers, ferns, and cycads that grew in the warm, humid environments. The first large predators, such as the early theropods, developed sharp teeth and claws designed to catch and kill, while herbivorous species began developing specialized teeth and jaw structures for grinding tough vegetation. By the time the Jurassic period arrived, around 210 million years ago, dinosaurs had already become the dominant land animals on Earth. The supercontinent Pangaea had started breaking apart into smaller landmasses, and this geological shift created new environments and ecosystems that encouraged further diversity among dinosaur species. During this period, some of the most iconic dinosaurs evolved, including the enormous long-necked sauropods, which could reach lengths of more than 100 feet, and the fierce carnivorous theropods that would eventually lead to the ancestors of modern birds. These sauropods, such as Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus, had massive bodies supported by thick pillar-like legs, tiny heads compared to their enormous size, and long necks that allowed them to reach the highest branches for food. They travelled in herds for protection, and likely relied on their sheer size as a defence against predators. In parallel, the predatory dinosaurs became increasingly specialised, with species like Allosaurus evolving strong jaws and sharp, serrated teeth, capable of slicing through the flesh of herbivorous dinosaurs. The competition between herbivores and carnivores created an evolutionary arms race that led to new adaptations, from protective armor and spikes on certain plant-eating dinosaurs to improved hunting strategies among predators. The Jurassic landscape was filled with vast forests, lakes, and river systems, which were home not only to dinosaurs but also to flying reptiles, early mammals, and numerous types of amphibians and fish. The skies were dominated by pterosaurs, winged reptiles that could have wingspans of over 30 feet, gliding above the forests and waterways in search of fish or smaller land animals. The Cretaceous period, beginning about 145 million years ago, marked the peak of dinosaur dominance. By this time, the continents had drifted closer to their modern positions, forming distinct land masses and isolated ecosystems. This isolation allowed for the evolution of highly specialized and often gigantic species. Among these were the fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex, a massive predator that could reach lengths of over 40 feet and weigh up to 7 tons, with jaws powerful enough to crush bones. Herbivorous dinosaurs such as Triceratops and Ankylosaurus evolved incredible defenses, including massive horns, frills, and armored plates to protect themselves from these predators. The diversity of life forms during this period was staggering, with a combination of massive giants, swift runners, cunning hunters, and heavily armoured vegetarians inhabiting every ecological niche imaginable. Dinosaurs were not limited to terrestrial environments. Some adapted to near-water habitats, feeding on fish and other aquatic life. Others developed adaptations for running at incredible speeds, climbing, or even gliding from tree to tree. Their reproductive strategies varied as well. Most dinosaurs laid eggs, and there is evidence that some species cared for their young, protecting nests and possibly even teaching their hatchling survival skills. Fossilized nests and trackways have provided crucial insight into how dinosaurs lived, moved, and interacted with one another. In certain locations, entire nesting grounds have been uncovered, showing thousands of eggs in carefully arranged clusters, hinting at social behaviours and group living in some species. Throughout their reign, dinosaurs experienced multiple environmental changes, including shifts in climate, volcanic eruptions, and changing sea levels. These events could have caused local extinctions and migrations, forcing dinosaurs to adapt to new challenges. Some species evolved into apex predators of their ecosystems, while others specialized in niches that allowed them to survive alongside larger, more dominant creatures. The evolutionary adaptability of dinosaurs was extraordinary, as evidenced by the incredible variety of body shapes, sizes, and lifestyles that developed over tens of millions of years. Dinosaurs also left their mark on other organisms. Their presence influenced the evolution of plants, which developed defenses like thorns, toxins, and tough leaves to survive the constant browsing. The rise of flowering plants toward the end of the Cretaceous may have been influenced in part by the selective pressures imposed by herbivorous dinosaurs. Smaller animals, including mammals, birds, lizards, and amphibians, adapted to avoid becoming prey, often becoming nocturnal, burrowing, or arboreal to escape the attention of giant dinosaurs. Fossil evidence shows that dinosaurs were not just confined to specific regions, but were truly global. Fossils have been discovered on every continent, including Antarctica, indicating that dinosaurs adapted to a wide range of climates and environments. During warmer periods, even polar regions supported lush vegetation and thriving dinosaur populations. In some cases, the fossil record reveals migration patterns, showing that dinosaurs travelled vast distances in search of food or suitable nesting sites. The extinction of the dinosaurs, which occurred around 66 million years ago, ended their reign but was not the result of a slow decline. Evidence points to a massive asteroid impact in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, combined with extensive volcanic activity and climate shifts as the primary causes. This sudden and catastrophic event caused massive fires, blocked sunlight, and disrupted ecosystems worldwide, wiping out the majority of dinosaur species. Only small, adaptable species survived, and these gave rise to modern birds, the living descendants of theropod dinosaurs. During their long dominance, dinosaurs displayed remarkable physiological adaptations. Some developed hollow bones to reduce weight and increase mobility, while others had air sacs connected to their respiratory systems, allowing efficient breathing even at enormous sizes. Feathers, initially evolving for insulation, later became tools for display, camouflage, and eventually flight in certain lineages. coloration, patterns, and possibly even social signaling likely played a significant role in their daily lives, although these details are harder to determine from fossils alone. Dinosaurs dominated every terrestrial environment, from tropical forests and floodplains to arid deserts and mountainous regions. They occupied a variety of ecological roles, including top predators, primary herbivores, scavengers, and omnivores. Each adaptation contributed to their ability to maintain dominance for over 165 million years, an achievement unmatched by any other group of animals in Earth's history. Fossilized footprints, skin impressions, and even fossilized dung have provided unique insights into their behavior, diet, and movement, revealing a level of complexity that was once unimaginable. Throughout the Mesozoic, the size and shape of dinosaurs varied immensely. Some, like the enormous Argentinosaurus, could reach lengths exceeding 115 feet, while others, like Compsognathus, were no larger than a turkey. Carnivores range from small, swift hunters to massive apex predators, each using speed, strategy, and physical strength to survive. Herbivores developed everything from long necks to reach treetops, to beaks and grinding teeth for processing tough plant material. Armor and defensive weapons were common, with species like Stegosaurus sporting rows of spikes along their backs and tails, and Ankylosaurus evolving a heavy club at the end of its tail. The intelligence of certain dinosaur species also varied, with some small theropods exhibiting relatively large brain sizes and complex social behaviors. Fossil evidence suggests that they may have hunted in packs, communicated through vocalizations, and coordinated group strategies for hunting or defense. Even the simple traces of behavior preserved in trackways reveal coordinated movements, suggesting some form of social interaction and communal living in various species. Dinosaurs were also extraordinarily resilient. They survived environmental upheavals, shifting continents, and evolving climates for over 165 million years, a testament to their evolutionary success. Their diversity ensured that when one group faced extinction, others could continue to thrive, maintaining their dominance across the globe. Each evolutionary innovation, from flight to armor to complex social behavior, added layers to their survival strategy, allowing them to remain the dominant land animals of their time. Paleontologists continue to study the bones, fossils, and traces of these incredible creatures, piecing together a picture of a world ruled by giants. The details uncovered through modern technology, including computer modeling, chemical analysis, and comparisons with modern animals, continue to reveal how dinosaurs grew, moved, hunted, and lived. Each discovery paints a more vivid picture of a world where dinosaurs were the ultimate rulers, shaping ecosystems, influencing the evolution of countless other species, and leaving a legacy that survives to this day in the form of birds. Over millions of years, dinosaurs evolved into shapes and sizes that seem almost fantastical to modern observers. The adaptations they developed were fine-tuned for survival in every conceivable niche. Herbivores became specialists in eating particular types of plants, while predators developed stealth, strength, and cunning. The interplay between predator and prey drove evolutionary change, creating a dynamic system where every adaptation led to new challenges for the next generation. The bones and fossils that remain are silent witnesses to this epic story of survival and dominance, providing insights into their anatomy, physiology, and the incredible span of time during which they ruled the planet. Dinosaurs' dominance was a combination of physical strength, adaptability, evolutionary innovation, and sheer persistence. Their reign spanned multiple geological periods, climates, and continents. They evolved to occupy every available ecological niche, and their impact on the planet was profound. Ecosystems were structured around their presence, and other species evolved in response to their behavior and existence. From the smallest feathered dinosaurs to the colossal sauropods, they created a world in which they were the unquestioned masters of land, sky, and sometimes even water. Even after the end of the Cretaceous, their influence persisted. The extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs allowed mammals and birds to diversify and fill ecological niches left vacant. But the legacy of dinosaurs remained embedded in modern ecosystems. Birds, with their feathers, beaks, and in some cases even nesting behaviors, are living reminders of the adaptability and innovation that characterized their prehistoric ancestors. The story of dinosaurs is one of unparalleled success, survival, and adaptation, spanning over 165 million years and encompassing a staggering diversity of forms, behaviours and environments, leaving an indelible mark on the history of life on Earth. Their reign was also marked by a profound influence on the geology of the planet. As they moved, fed and lived, dinosaurs shaped landscapes. Their footprints, some several feet wide, left impressions in mud and sand that hardened over millions of years into rock. Their dung contributed nutrients to soil and supported the growth of plants, affecting the very structure of prehistoric ecosystems. Fossilized plants, pollen and microfossils found alongside dinosaur remains provide a glimpse into the interactions between species, showing how dinosaurs were not isolated creatures but integral parts of complex, thriving worlds. Dinosaurs also exhibited remarkable reproductive diversity. Eggs varied greatly in size, from tiny ones no larger than a golf ball to massive eggs that could weigh several pounds. Nesting strategies range from solitary burrows to large colonies, with evidence suggesting that some species returned to the same nesting grounds year after year. Juvenile dinosaurs grew rapidly in some species, reaching maturity within a few years, while others grew more slowly, taking decades to reach full size. This variation in growth patterns demonstrates the complexity of their life histories and the evolutionary strategies that contributed to their long-lasting dominance. The evolutionary innovations that dinosaurs achieved were staggering. The development of feathers, initially for insulation or display, eventually enabled flight in certain lineages, leading to the birds that would survive the catastrophic end of the Cretaceous. Advanced respiratory systems, including air sacs that allowed efficient oxygen intake, supported massive bodies and active metabolisms. Locomotion varied widely, with some species capable of remarkable speed and agility, while others relied on sheer size and strength. Defensive adaptations included spikes, armor plates, horns, and even tail clubs, while offensive adaptations range from sharp teeth to powerful claws and hunting intelligence. Dinosaurs' interactions with other species also shaped their world. Predatory pressures influenced the evolution of smaller animals, driving them to develop camouflage, speed, or defensive behaviours. Herbivorous dinosaurs influenced the development of plant life, with some plants evolving toxins, thorns, or hard leaves to survive constant browsing. The ecosystems that developed during the age of dinosaurs were interconnected and complex, with every species influencing the survival and evolution of others in subtle and profound ways. The fossil record reveals a staggering variety of species that lived during the age of dinosaurs. From towering sauropods like Argentinosaurus to small feathered hunters like Microraptor, the range of forms demonstrates evolutionary experimentation and adaptation to every possible ecological niche. The discovery of fossilized tracks, nests, and even preserved soft tissue has provided insight into their behavior, diet, social structures, and growth patterns. These discoveries show that dinosaurs were not static or simple creatures, but dynamic, adaptable, and incredibly diverse organisms that dominated Earth for more than 165 million years. In every corner of the planet, dinosaurs thrived. They adapted to deserts, forests, wetlands, mountains, and polar regions, displaying a level of ecological flexibility that contributed to their prolonged dominance. Their physical and behavioral adaptations allowed them to survive extreme climates, seasonal changes, and shifting environments. The fossil record shows that even in harsh conditions, dinosaurs evolved strategies to cope, from migration to hibernation, herd behavior, and social cooperation. Dinosaurs also displayed evidence of intelligence and complex behavior. Fossilized brain cases suggest that certain species had larger brains relative to body size, indicating problem-solving abilities and sensory awareness. Social behaviors, such as herd migration, pack hunting, and parental care, are inferred from fossilized tracks, nesting sites, and fossilized juveniles found with adults. This combination of physical prowess, adaptability, and behavioral sophistication helped dinosaurs maintain their dominance across continents and through millions of years of environmental changes. Even in the final stages of their reign, dinosaurs continued to evolve. Specialized species emerged in isolated regions such as island chains and peninsulas, showing that they were still capable of significant evolutionary innovation. Gigantic predators, heavily armored herbivores, and highly agile small species all existed simultaneously, forming complex food webs and ecological systems. The diversity and adaptability of dinosaurs were unmatched, and their dominance was absolute until the catastrophic events that marked the end of the Cretaceous. The impact of dinosaurs on the Earth was immense, shaping ecosystems, influencing plant and animal evolution, and leaving behind an extraordinary fossil record that continues to reveal secrets millions of years later. Their dominance was the result of an exceptional combination of physical adaptation, evolutionary innovation, ecological flexibility, and resilience over an astonishingly long span of time. The Mesozoic era was their era, a time when dinosaurs were the rulers of every landscape, the apex predators of the land, and the architects of ecosystems, a reign that lasted over 165 million years and left a legacy that continues to captivate scientists and enthusiasts alike. Their success can also be seen in the adaptations that allowed dinosaurs to dominate niches that were unavailable to other creatures. Aquatic dinosaurs exploited rivers and lakes, while arboreal and gliding species occupied forest canopies. Some species developed extraordinary senses, including acute vision, smell, or hearing, enabling them to hunt or avoid predators with precision. In many ways, dinosaurs were not just survivors, they were masters of innovation, adapting in ways that allowed them to exploit the world around them fully. Dinosaurs' dominance also created selective pressures that shaped evolution across multiple lineages. Their presence forced plants to evolve defensive strategies, smaller animals to evolve stealth or burrowing behaviors, and other reptiles to adapt or face extinction. The Mesozoic was a time of rapid evolutionary change, and dinosaurs were the central force driving that change. Fossil evidence shows that they were not merely passive participants in their ecosystems, but active shapers of their environment, influencing everything from vegetation patterns to the behavior of smaller animals. As the age of dinosaurs continued, their diversity increased to levels never seen before or since. Giant sauropods roamed open plains, while agile theropods stalked the forests. Armored herbivores patrolled riverbanks, and small bird-like species flitted through the undergrowth. Each adaptation reflected millions of years of evolution, experimentation, and survival, leading to a world dominated by these extraordinary creatures. Even the interactions between predator and prey were finely balanced, with each species developing strategies to counter the other in a constant evolutionary dance. Dinosaurs maintained this dominance across changing continents, climates, and ecosystems. Their ability to thrive in such a wide range of environments is a testament to their evolutionary success. Even as mountains rose, seas receded, and climates fluctuated, dinosaurs adapted to new challenges, evolving into new forms and behaviors that allowed them to continue their rule over land for more than 165 million years. Every fossil, footprint, and bone tells a story of this incredible era, revealing how dinosaurs were more than just giant reptiles. They were a complex, adaptable, and dominant group of creatures whose reign shaped the world in ways still evident today. From the smallest raptors to the largest sauropods, dinosaurs left an indelible mark on Earth, a legacy of dominance, adaptability, and survival across 165 million years of ever-changing landscapes and ecosystems, a testament to their unparalleled success as rulers of the prehistoric world. Their reign also influenced the evolution of flight, feathers, and bird-like characteristics, bridging the gap between the age of reptiles and the age of birds. In addition, the fossil record shows remarkable evidence of social behavior, such as herding, parental care, and possibly even communication through calls or visual displays. Dinosaurs were not solitary monsters, but creatures that formed complex societies, hunted cooperatively, and protected their young, all contributing to their long-standing dominance. The age of dinosaurs witnessed an incredible range of evolutionary innovations, from the smallest feathered predators to the enormous long-necked giants. Their dominance over the land was unmatched, and their physical, behavioral, and ecological adaptations ensured their survival through countless challenges, environmental changes, and millions of years of evolution. Each new fossil discovery adds depth to our understanding of these extraordinary creatures, providing a glimpse into the Mesozoic world where dinosaurs were the ultimate rulers, shaping ecosystems, influencing the evolution of other species, and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and curiosity millions of years later. The ancient seas of our planet were not calm and quiet places. They were teeming with life, but not the kind of small, gentle fish we often picture today. Instead, they were home to immense marine reptiles that dominated the oceans for millions of years, creatures so powerful and strange that they could inspire both awe and fear. Among these giants were plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and other formidable predators that hunted with unmatched skill and efficiency, shaping the balance of life in prehistoric oceans in ways we are still discovering today. Plesiosaurs were one of the most remarkable groups of marine reptiles to ever exist. They first appeared in the early part of the Jurassic period, around 210 million years ago, and continued to thrive until the very end of the Cretaceous period, roughly 66 million years ago. Plesiosaurs were instantly recognizable due to their unusual body structure. Most had broad, flat bodies with 4 large flippers, which allowed them to fly through water with movements similar to the way birds or bats move their wings through air. Their necks were incredibly long, sometimes stretching more than 20 feet, while their heads were relatively small and often armed with sharp teeth. This strange combination of features made them highly effective hunters. Some species, like Elasmosaurus, had necks so long that they could bend and twist them to snatch fish, and squid with incredible precision, striking with speed that would have made even the fastest prey struggle to escape. Plesiosaurs lived in a wide variety of marine environments, from shallow coastal areas to deep oceans, and they adapted to different diets depending on their size and neck length. Shorter-necked varieties, often referred to as pliosaurs, were built for strength rather than reach, with massive jaws capable of crushing prey like turtles, other marine reptiles, and large fish. Some pliosaurs, such as Kronosaurus, could reach lengths of nearly 40 feet, making them among the most dangerous predators in the water. Their powerful tails and flippers allowed them to move swiftly despite their size, and their streamlined bodies minimized resistance as they swam through waves and currents. Plesiosaurs' diversity in form and hunting style shows how evolution experimented with different designs to dominate the oceans for over 100 million years. Mosasaurs, on the other hand, were the top predators of the late Cretaceous seas, around 100 million to 66 million years ago. Unlike plesiosaurs, which were descendants of earlier marine reptiles, mosasaurs evolved from lizards that returned to the water. Over time, they developed bodies perfectly suited to aquatic life, with elongated snake-like shapes, paddle-like limbs, and massive, powerful tails that provided incredible propulsion. Mosasaurs could grow to astonishing lengths, with some of the largest species like Mosasaurus hoffmanni stretching over 50 feet from snout to tail. Their jaws were filled with sharp, conical teeth, capable of gripping slippery fish, crushing turtles, and even taking bites out of other marine reptiles. Mosasaurs were apex predators, meaning they had almost no natural enemies in the seas of their time. They hunted with intelligence and speed, ambushing prey or chasing it with sudden bursts of power. Fossil evidence shows that some mosasaurs had flexible skulls and powerful jaw muscles, allowing them to swallow large prey whole or break bones with a single bite. They were so successful in the oceans that they spread across every major ocean basin, from the shallow continental shelves to the deeper open waters, forming a widespread and dominant group that played a key role in the marine food chain until the mass extinction event 66 million years ago. The hunting strategies of these marine reptiles were as varied as their body shapes. Long-necked plesiosaurs often relied on stealth, slowly approaching schools of fish and striking with lightning speed. Short-necked pliosaurs and mosasaurs used brute force, combining speed and power to chase down even the fastest prey. Fossilized stomach contents reveal astonishing details about their diets. Plesiosaurs consumed fish, cephalopods, and even smaller marine reptiles, sometimes leaving behind evidence of swallowed bones and hard shells. Mosasaurs ate fish, sharks, ammonites, and other mosasaurs, showing that cannibalism could be part of their lives. This diversity in diet and hunting style shows that these creatures were not just random giants. They were highly adapted, efficient hunters that shaped the structure of ancient marine ecosystems. Some species of marine reptiles also developed terrifying adaptations for survival and defense. For instance, certain mosasaurs had serrated teeth, ideal for tearing flesh, while others had more pointed teeth for gripping slippery prey. Some plesiosaurs may have hunted in groups, using coordinated attacks to trap schools of fish, while others relied on camouflage, blending with the blue depths to approach prey undetected. These adaptations highlight how evolution tested different strategies to ensure survival in a competitive and often dangerous environment. The sheer size of these creatures also made them impressive forces of nature. A fully grown mosasaur or pliosaur could easily dwarf any modern-day shark, including the great white. A large mosasaur's head alone could be as long as a small car, and the force of its bite could crush bone and shell with ease. Plesiosaurs with their long necks could strike at prey from a distance, keeping their massive bodies relatively hidden until the moment of attack. For prey species, encountering one of these predators was likely a life-or-death experience, and the constant threat of predation influenced the behaviour and evolution of countless marine animals, from fish to other reptiles. The environments these giants inhabited were dynamic and full of life. Coral reefs, underwater mountains, and shallow seas offered abundant hunting grounds, while deep ocean areas provided shelter and breeding grounds. Fossil evidence shows that many marine reptiles gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs on land, a significant adaptation that allowed them to spend their entire lives in water. This strategy may have contributed to their evolutionary success, as it reduced the risks associated with leaving the water to reproduce. Some plesiosaurs are thought to have given birth to 1 or 2 offspring at a time, investing significant energy in each young, while mosasaurs may have had larger litters, producing enough offspring to maintain their dominance in the seas despite predation and environmental changes. Fossil discoveries around the world have helped reconstruct the lives of these marine giants. In North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, paleontologists have uncovered skeletons, teeth, and even soft tissue impressions that reveal the size, shape, and movement of these creatures. Plesiosaur fossils often show elongated neck vertebrae, while mosasaur skeletons display powerful tails and limbs modified into paddles. Some rare fossils preserve stomach contents, offering direct insight into the food web of ancient oceans. Other fossils show evidence of injuries and healing, indicating that life in the sea was not only dangerous but also marked by frequent struggles, confrontations, and survival challenges. The extinction of these marine giants coincided with the mass extinction event 66 million years ago, which also wiped out the dinosaurs on land. This catastrophic event, likely caused by a massive asteroid impact, drastically altered the planet's climate and ecosystems. Ocean temperatures dropped, sunlight was blocked by dust and debris, and food chains collapsed. Marine reptiles, despite millions of years of evolutionary success, could not survive the rapid environmental changes. Fossils show a sudden disappearance of these species from the record, marking the end of an era in which enormous reptiles ruled the oceans. The legacy of plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and other marine predators extends beyond their extinction. Their fossils tell us about the evolutionary pressures of the Mesozoic seas, showing how different species adapted to hunting, swimming, and reproducing in a world without humans. Their anatomy has inspired modern research in biomechanics, helping scientists understand the limits of movement and feeding strategies in large aquatic animals. Comparisons between these extinct reptiles and modern marine predators, like whales and sharks, reveal surprising similarities in hunting efficiency, body design, and ecological roles, suggesting that the solutions evolution found millions of years ago still influence life today. The diversity among marine reptiles was astonishing. Some were slow-moving ambush predators, waiting patiently near reefs or underwater structures to strike. Others were fast, agile hunters capable of chasing schools of fish across open waters. Some may have even competed with each other, with mosasaurs attacking the same prey as pliosaurs or large plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence sometimes shows teeth marks on bones that match the size and shape of different predators, providing a glimpse into ancient interactions and confrontations. The oceans they inhabited were not empty. Giant squid, ammonites, and a variety of bony fish swam alongside these reptiles, forming complex food webs. The presence of these predators likely influenced migration patterns, schooling behaviour, and reproduction of prey species. Some fish evolved thick scales or spiny defences to avoid being eaten, while cephalopods may have developed faster swimming abilities or camouflage to escape detection. These predator-prey dynamics reveal a sophisticated and competitive ecosystem, one in which marine reptiles were at the very top of the food chain. The appearance of these creatures would have been terrifying to any observer. Plesiosaurs with their long swaying necks and sharp-toothed heads, mosasaurs with bodies like giant sea snakes and gaping jaws capable of swallowing a human whole, and other predators with armoured or toothed heads, all created a world in which life was a constant struggle for survival. Their movement through water combined elegance with lethal efficiency. Their hunting methods balanced cunning with raw power, and their evolutionary adaptations allowed them to dominate for tens of millions of years. fossil discoveries continue to reveal new information about these giants. New species of Plesiosaurs and Mosasaurs are described regularly, each with unique adaptations or unusual physical traits. Some fossils even show preserved skin patterns or evidence of scales, suggesting that these animals were not only predators, but also had physical characteristics that helped them blend into their environment. Advanced imaging techniques allow scientists to reconstruct muscle structure, swimming ability, and even how these reptiles breathed and hunted, providing an increasingly detailed picture of life in the ancient seas. Understanding these marine reptiles also offers insight into broader evolutionary patterns. The repeated development of long necks, streamlined bodies, and powerful tails shows that certain solutions to survival in water are favoured by evolution. The parallel evolution of different groups like Plesiosaurs and Mosasaurs demonstrates that unrelated species can arrive at similar adaptations when faced with similar environmental challenges. These patterns reveal how evolution works over millions of years to create efficient predators that can dominate their habitats. Even though Plesiosaurs, Mosasaurs, and other marine giants are gone, their influence remains in the fossil record and in our imagination. They were apex predators, explorers of deep and shallow waters, and masters of hunting and survival. They remind us that the oceans of the past were filled with life forms, unlike anything alive today, creatures that challenged the limits of size, speed, and intelligence. They are a window into a world where humans had not yet appeared, where evolution tested extraordinary forms, and where the sea itself was a stage for some of the most magnificent and terrifying life the Earth has ever known. From their first appearance over 210 million years ago to their extinction 66 million years ago, these marine reptiles ruled their environments with astonishing success. They were not just giant animals, they were highly specialized, perfectly adapted hunters that shaped the structure and behavior of countless other species in the ocean. Their legacy continues to fascinate scientists and the public alike, providing endless questions about life, evolution, and the dramatic, sometimes violent history of our planet's oceans. Even today, when paleontologists uncover a new plesiosaur neck vertebra or a mosasaur jaw, they reveal new stories about how these giants lived, hunted, and interacted with the world around them. Each fossil is a piece of a puzzle, showing how these animals adapted to challenges, competed for survival, and ultimately shaped the prehistoric marine ecosystems. Their lives were full of danger, strategy, and incredible physical capabilities that rival the greatest predators of modern oceans. Marine reptiles of the Mesozoic seas exemplify the complexity of ancient life. They were not simple giants. They were intelligent, adaptable, and often specialized in ways that allowed them to thrive in environments that were constantly changing. The variations in their body structures, hunting methods, and reproductive strategies demonstrate a level of evolutionary sophistication that is both impressive and inspiring. They remind us that the oceans were once a realm ruled by extraordinary creatures capable of feats that modern animals can only approach in imagination. Their extinction marked the end of an era, but their fossils continue to inform our understanding of evolution, adaptation, and the history of life on Earth. Through careful study, scientists reconstruct not only the appearance of these animals, but also their behavior, diet, and interactions with other species. They provide a direct link to a world that existed millions of years before humans, showing us the dangers, strategies, and marvels of a time when the seas were ruled by predators whose size, power, and hunting skill were unmatched by almost any creature before or since. The more we study plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and other marine reptiles, the more we learn about how life in the oceans functioned millions of years ago. Their bones tell stories of growth, injury, and healing, hinting at the challenges they faced. Teeth and stomach contents reveal the relationships between predators and prey, while their skeletons show the physical adaptations that allowed them to glide, strike, and dominate in water. The complexity of these creatures, from the smallest details of bone structure to the immense power of their jaws and tails, continues to amaze researchers and enthusiasts alike. Their hunting abilities, environmental adaptations, and evolutionary innovations make them some of the most fascinating subjects in paleontology. They were capable of incredible feats of speed, strength, and precision, with some species hunting individually, while others may have used coordinated strategies to capture prey. The ecological pressures they exerted shaped the evolution of countless other marine species, creating a web of life in which predator and prey, were constantly adapting to one another. The oceans they roamed were filled with constant movement, competition, and survival challenges. Currents, tides, and changes in sea levels influenced their behavior and distribution, while food availability and seasonal variations affected hunting strategies and migration patterns. Fossils found in different parts of the world show that these creatures were widespread, capable of crossing vast distances and adapting to a variety of marine environments. Their success and eventual extinction provide critical insights into how ecosystems respond to both evolutionary pressures and catastrophic events. Even though they are gone, the impact of plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and other marine reptiles continues to shape our understanding of life in the past. They are a reminder that evolution can produce astonishing diversity and specialization, and that the oceans have always been arenas of power, strategy, and survival. Their fossils, whether massive bones or delicate teeth, continue to tell the story of a world in which these giants ruled, hunted, and thrived, leaving behind a legacy that fascinates and inspires those who study them today. The presence of these reptiles in ancient seas underscores the complexity of prehistoric life. It shows us that evolution produces not just large creatures, but intelligent, highly specialized predators capable of dominating their environments. The variation among species, from the long-necked plesiosaurs to the formidable mosasaurs, demonstrates how life adapts to fill every available niche, from stealthy hunters to brute force predators. This diversity also hints at the interactions and conflicts that would have occurred, providing a vivid picture of life in a world untouched by humans. The study of these marine reptiles continues to evolve with new discoveries and technologies. CT scans, 3D modeling, and computer simulations allow scientists to examine movement, muscle structure, and hunting strategies with unprecedented detail. Fossil evidence combined with modern scientific tools enables a reconstruction of prehistoric oceans in which plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and other predators played leading roles. Through this work, we gain a better understanding of the dynamics of ancient ecosystems, the pressures that shaped evolutionary paths, and the incredible diversity of life that existed long before humans arrived. The combination of size, strength, intelligence, and specialization made these reptiles rulers of their world. Plesiosaurs with long, flexible necks could strike quickly at unsuspecting prey, while mosasaurs used brute force and speed to chase down fish, sharks, and even other marine reptiles. Some species were solitary hunters, relying on stealth or sudden attacks, while others may have engaged in complex social behaviors or competition with their own kind. Fossil evidence of bite marks, healed injuries, and stomach contents provides a window into these interactions, revealing a world filled with both danger and strategy. These ancient marine giants remind us of the extraordinary ways life has evolved on Earth. They show that evolution can produce forms perfectly suited to their environment, capable of dominating entire ecosystems for millions of years. Their fossils serve as a bridge to the past, allowing us to study behaviors, adaptations, and ecological roles that no longer exist. They illustrate the power and diversity of life in prehistoric oceans, a realm in which survival required intelligence, strength, and often extraordinary physical adaptations. Marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs were not just enormous animals, they were apex predators, innovators of hunting strategies, and essential components of their ecosystems. Their evolutionary success demonstrates how life can adapt to dominate any environment, from shallow seas to deep ocean expanses. Each discovery, each fossil, adds another layer to our understanding of these creatures, revealing the intricacies of their anatomy, behavior, and ecological influence. The oceans they inhabited were arenas of power, competition, and survival, a world in which these predators thrived and shaped the lives of countless other species around them. The extinction of these marine giants was sudden in geological terms, yet their influence continues to resonate. By studying their bones, teeth, and other fossils, we uncover insights into evolutionary biology, predator-prey dynamics, and the history of life on Earth. Their bodies, shaped by millions of years of adaptation, reveal strategies for movement, hunting, and survival that remain impressive even by modern standards. Plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and their kin remain iconic symbols of prehistoric life, demonstrating the incredible diversity and complexity of ancient oceans, where every day was a struggle for survival against giants of the deep. These creatures were not simply large, they were masterpieces of evolution, with bodies and behaviors designed to conquer the seas. Their hunting techniques, from ambushes to fast chases, their adaptations from long necks to powerful tails, and their reproductive strategies, from live birth to care of young, all show an extraordinary level of evolutionary sophistication. Fossil evidence continues to provide new insights, revealing how these predators interacted with their environment, competed with each other, and maintained dominance over millions of years. The discovery of new species continues to surprise scientists, showing that even after millions of years, there are still mysteries to uncover about these marine giants. Some plesiosaurs had necks so long that they could reach around obstacles or strike from hidden positions, while some mosasaurs had bite forces so powerful that they could crush armor and bone alike. Each fossil is a testament to the ingenuity of evolution, illustrating how life can produce specialized, efficient, and awe-inspiring predators. Marine reptiles of the Mesozoic seas were the rulers of their world, shaping the structure and behavior of countless other creatures. They moved through water with grace and power, hunted with precision and strength, and adapted to the challenges of their environment in ways that allowed them to thrive for millions of years. From the first plesiosaurs in the early Jurassic to the largest mosasaurs in the late Cretaceous, these giants were unparalleled in their time. The first mammals were creatures so small that they could slip under the radar of enormous predators and survive in a world dominated by dinosaurs. These early mammals were nothing like the large familiar animals we know today. They were tiny, often no bigger than a mouse or a small rat, and they had to rely on clever ways to stay safe. Their bodies were covered in fur, which helped them keep warm during cold nights, and they had sensitive whiskers and acute hearing to detect the slightest movement or sound in their surroundings. These mammals were primarily nocturnal, which means they were active during the night, using darkness as a shield against enormous, sharp-toothed dinosaurs roaming the earth. Their small size allowed them to hide in burrows, crevices, and dense vegetation, places where larger animals could not reach them, and their intelligence and adaptability helped them survive through times of great danger and change. These first mammals lived during the late Triassic and Jurassic periods, roughly 225 million to 145 million years ago, a span of millions of years when dinosaurs were becoming the dominant land animals. Despite their diminutive size, these mammals had unique features that set them apart from reptiles, the dominant group of animals at the time. They had more complex teeth than reptiles, with specialized molars designed for grinding plants, seeds, or small insects. Their jaws moved in ways that allowed them to chew food efficiently, something reptiles could not do as well. Mammals also developed a more sophisticated brain structure compared to their reptilian relatives, which allowed for improved senses, problem-solving, and social behavior. These traits were subtle but powerful advantages that would eventually allow mammals to thrive after the age of dinosaurs ended. The first mammals had different lifestyles and diets. Some were insectivores, hunting small insects, spiders, and other tiny invertebrates, while others experimented with seeds, fruits, or small reptiles. Their nocturnal habits meant they avoided direct competition with dinosaurs for food during the day, giving them a special niche in the ecosystem. Their small size and nocturnal lifestyle also meant they could explore environments that were too risky for larger animals. Forest floors, dense underbrush, and underground tunnels became their domain, where they could find food and shelter and avoid the watchful eyes of predators like Allosauruses, Stegosaurs, and giant flying pterosaurs. These mammals were agile, often capable of climbing trees or jumping between branches to escape danger. Some may have even glided short distances, using flaps of skin between their limbs, a primitive version of the gliding ability seen in some modern squirrels. Reproduction among the first mammals was another defining feature. Unlike reptiles, which laid eggs and provided little parental care, early mammals began to develop more complex reproductive strategies. While some of the earliest mammals may still have laid eggs like monotremes do today, others were viviparous, giving birth to live young. This was a remarkable advantage because live birth allowed mothers to protect their developing offspring and keep them warm and nourished until they were capable of independent survival. Parental care, even in the most basic form, helped increase the survival rate of their small, vulnerable young in a world filled with predators. These early mammals probably had litters of only a few babies at a time, but each baby had a better chance of reaching adulthood than reptilian eggs exposed to the environment. Fossil evidence shows that these first mammals had impressive adaptations for survival. Their bones were delicate and small, yet they reveal a creature built for speed and agility. Limb structures indicate that they could scurry quickly, climb efficiently, and squeeze into tight spaces. Their skulls were small but contained large eye sockets, suggesting they had excellent night vision to navigate the darkness. Fossils also show the beginnings of 3 middle ear bones, which improved hearing and allowed these mammals to detect predators or prey with astonishing precision. These adaptations, while modest by modern standards, were revolutionary at the time and set the foundation for all mammals that would come later. Scientists have discovered fossils of some of the earliest mammals in North America, Europe, and Asia, from the Triassic through the Jurassic periods. One of the most famous early mammals is Morganocodon, a small creature about the size of a shrew that lived around 210 million years ago. Morganocodon had a jaw structure similar to modern mammals, with teeth specialized for grinding and chewing. Its skull shows evidence of advanced hearing, and its body was covered in fur. Another early mammal, Megazostrodon, lived around 200 million years ago and had a body roughly the length of a small mouse. Fossils of Megazostrodon show that it had a flexible spine, powerful limbs for climbing, and a strong sense of smell, all traits that made it an effective nighttime hunter and forager. Life for these mammals was dangerous. Every step outside their hiding places carried the risk of being eaten by the giants that ruled the land. Dinosaurs, which could reach tens of feet in height or more, were everywhere, with sharp teeth and claws designed to catch and kill. Yet the first mammals survived by being clever and adaptable. They moved quietly, avoided confrontation, and used their small size to their advantage. Insects and plants provided sustenance, and by being nocturnal, mammals avoided competition with many dinosaurs for food. They could explore areas larger predators ignored, slowly creating a new niche where they could thrive despite the constant threat of extinction. The first mammals were also surprisingly diverse. Fossils suggest a wide range of body shapes and sizes among these early creatures. Some were long and slender, designed to slip into tight burrows and move quickly through underbrush. Others were more robust, with strong limbs capable of digging for food or creating shelters underground. Despite their small stature, these mammals began experimenting with different ways of living, feeding, and reproducing. Over time, these small experiments led to the diversity of mammals we see today, from tiny shrews to elephants, bats, and whales. Even though dinosaurs overshadowed them, mammals were quietly evolving. Their brains, while small, were more complex than reptiles and allowed for greater learning and memory. Early mammals likely had a mix of instinct and learned behavior that let them find food, avoid predators, and raise their young successfully. They were capable of short bursts of speed, climbing, swimming, or hiding in ways that dinosaurs could not. These behaviors were subtle but crucial steps in the long evolutionary path that would eventually see mammals dominate the Earth after the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Fossils also reveal that early mammals had fur or hair, an adaptation that helped them regulate body temperature in ways reptiles could not. Reptiles rely on the sun to warm their bodies, but mammals could stay active at night and in cooler environments because their bodies could generate and retain heat. This allowed early mammals to exploit times and places that dinosaurs avoided, giving them access to food and safety when the land was otherwise dangerous. Their fur also provided sensory feedback through whiskers, allowing mammals to feel their environment in darkness or navigate tight spaces without danger. These first mammals were not just survivors, they were innovators in their own small ways. Some may have lived in trees, using branches for shelter or to escape predators. Others dug burrows underground, creating safe havens where they could sleep, raise young, and store food. Their nocturnal habits were not just about hiding from dinosaurs. They also allowed mammals to hunt small prey that were themselves more active at night, such as insects, worms, or other tiny creatures. These habits shaped mammals' evolution, favoring intelligence, agility, and adaptability. The diet of early mammals was varied depending on species and environment. Insect-eating mammals had sharp, pointed teeth for puncturing and chewing exoskeletons. Those that ate seeds or plants had molars capable of grinding tough materials. This variation in diet was essential for survival because it allowed different species to coexist without directly competing for the same food. Early mammals were opportunistic eaters, taking advantage of whatever resources were available, a trait that would serve their descendants well in future ecosystems. While dinosaurs dominated the land and skies, early mammals began shaping the world in subtle ways. They dispersed seeds, hunted insects, and created burrows that other animals might use for shelter. Even as small creatures, they had ecological roles that supported the balance of their environments. Fossilized burrows and teeth marks indicate interactions with other species, showing that mammals were already becoming active participants in their ecosystems, rather than merely hiding from predators. The evolution of the first mammals was gradual but persistent. Small improvements in teeth, brain size, sensory organs, and reproductive strategies gave these creatures an advantage over millions of years. Each adaptation increased their chances of survival, allowing mammals to endure environmental changes, predation, and competition with other animals. Over tens of millions of years, these incremental changes accumulated, laying the foundation for the explosion of mammal diversity after the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. By the late Jurassic period, roughly 150 million years ago, mammals were already experimenting with new forms and behaviors. Some species began climbing trees more efficiently, while others burrowed more deeply. Nocturnal habits were firmly established, along with sharper teeth, better senses, and more complex social behaviors. Each generation passed on traits that made survival in a dinosaur-dominated world slightly easier, slowly creating the blueprint for future mammals. Some evidence suggests that early mammals even had social interactions. They may have communicated with each other through sounds or scent marking, especially when raising young or defending territory. These social behaviors would later evolve into more complex forms of communication, cooperation, and even learning among mammal species millions of years later. The small, humble beginnings of mammals already contained the seeds of intelligence and adaptability that would eventually allow them to dominate the Earth. During the Mesozoic era, roughly 250 to 66 million years ago, mammals remained small but persistent. Fossils from various parts of the world show that mammals had spread across continents, finding niches in forests, deserts, and wetlands. Their size, nocturnal habits, and intelligence allowed them to survive global climate shifts, volcanic activity, and changing ecosystems that would have been catastrophic for less adaptable creatures. Mammals were survivors, quietly building their legacy while the giant dinosaurs ruled visibly and visibly terrified their world. Some early mammals developed specializations that allowed them to exploit very specific ecological niches. Certain species evolved elongated snouts or tongues to catch insects, while others had teeth that could handle seeds or fruit. Limb modifications allowed some to climb better, jump further, or dig more effectively. Each adaptation was subtle, but over millions of years these small differences accumulated, leading to an ever-growing diversity of mammals ready to thrive once the age of dinosaurs came to an end. The nocturnal lifestyle of early mammals had a profound effect on their evolution. Being active at night required excellent vision, hearing, and a keen sense of smell. Mammals developed larger eye sockets to accommodate sensitive eyes, enhancing their ability to see in darkness. The structure of their inner ears improved, allowing them to detect the faintest sounds. These adaptations not only helped them avoid predators, but also allowed them to hunt effectively for insects and other small prey in darkness, giving them a major survival advantage in a dinosaur-dominated world. As the Triassic and Jurassic periods passed, mammals continued to slowly diversify. Species spread geographically and began experimenting with new habitats. Fossil evidence shows that some mammals were arboreal, living in trees, while others burrowed underground or hid in rocky crevices. These experiments with lifestyle and habitat use were small, incremental changes, but they set the stage for the great mammalian radiation that would occur after the mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago. Even though they were small and often unnoticed, early mammals had complex biological systems. Their metabolism was higher than reptiles, allowing them to maintain activity during cooler nights and recover more quickly from exertion. Fur kept them warm and protected, while sweat glands, though primitive, may have helped regulate body temperature. Their circulatory and respiratory systems were beginning to function more efficiently than those of reptiles, giving them the endurance needed for scavenging, hunting, and avoiding predators. These traits combined to make mammals resilient survivors in a world that seemed to favor giant reptiles. Some fossils show evidence of early mammals with flexible spines, strong limb muscles, and clawed digits, indicating that they were capable of climbing, digging, and quick bursts of running. Their skeletons reveal a small but agile body, built for survival rather than dominance. These physical traits, coupled with intelligence and nocturnal habits, allowed mammals to evade the sharp teeth, claws, and size advantage of the enormous dinosaurs that shared their world. The first mammals were pioneers in their own quiet way. They were small, clever, and adaptable, experimenting with diets, habitats, and reproductive strategies that would eventually lead to the incredible diversity of mammals seen in the modern world. While dinosaurs captured the imagination as giant rulers of the land, mammals were quietly laying the foundation for the future, using intelligence, agility, and resilience to carve out a niche in an unforgiving and dangerous environment. Even in the face of the immense power and numbers of dinosaurs, mammals survived, multiplied, and slowly evolved. They showed that size alone was not the only path to success. Survival depended on clever adaptations, the ability to exploit new opportunities, and the capacity to endure long periods of danger without direct confrontation. Over tens of millions of years, these strategies allowed mammals to become more sophisticated, more varied, and more capable of thriving in environments that were once considered the exclusive domain of dinosaurs. Fossilized remains show that some early mammals developed specialized teeth patterns, jaw structures, and limb modifications that allowed them to occupy very specific ecological niches. This kind of specialization would eventually enable mammals to radiate into hundreds of species, each adapted to different diets, habitats, and behaviors. These early experiments with biology and behavior were small but crucial steps in the evolutionary story of mammals. The nocturnal, tiny mammals of the dinosaur era may have seemed insignificant, but they were quietly shaping the future. Their intelligence, adaptability, and resilience gave them survival advantages that would pay off dramatically after the mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period. These small creatures, scurrying under the cover of night, climbing trees, digging burrows, and hunting insects, were laying the groundwork for the dominance of mammals that would eventually rise millions of years later. The first mammals were creatures of contrast. They were small yet resourceful, vulnerable yet intelligent, nocturnal yet highly active in their chosen hours. Their evolution shows a careful balance of survival strategies, using senses, intelligence, and flexibility to navigate a world dominated by giant reptiles. Each small adaptation, from sharper teeth to better hearing, from fur for warmth to nocturnal habits, contributed to their long-term survival. Fossils reveal this intricate evolutionary dance, showing that the story of mammals began not with dominance, but with survival, cunning, and adaptability. Their persistence over millions of years, despite living alongside enormous predators, is a testament to their evolutionary success. Early mammals found niches that allowed them to survive, even as vast continents shifted, climates changed, and new threats emerged. Fossil evidence across Europe, North America, and Asia shows that mammals were already experimenting with body forms, diets, and habitats, establishing patterns that would continue and expand long after the last non-avian dinosaurs disappeared from the planet. The story of the first mammals is one of resilience and quiet innovation. While dinosaurs captured the land, skies, and oceans in dramatic ways, mammals occupied the margins, using clever adaptations to survive and thrive. Each nocturnal excursion, each hidden burrow, each small clutch of young successfully raised, was a victory for these small pioneering creatures. They were laying the foundation for all mammalian life to come, from the tiniest shrews to the largest whales, from agile squirrels to intelligent primates, and ultimately to humans themselves. Fossils from species like Morganucodon, Megazostrodon, and others show that the first mammals were more than mere survivors. They were innovators in a quiet but significant evolutionary race. Their small bodies, acute senses, and complex behaviors enabled them to carve out a living in an era dominated by colossal reptiles. Every adaptation, whether for feeding, hiding, reproducing, or sensing danger, contributed to a gradual but unstoppable path toward the diversity and complexity of mammals seen today. Even as the Jurassic period gave way to the Cretaceous, roughly 145 to 66 million years ago, mammals continued their slow, steady evolution. Fossils indicate that they were experimenting with new lifestyles, developing more sophisticated brains, and refining their nocturnal habits. Their small size and adaptability remained crucial to survival, allowing them to exploit niches that dinosaurs ignored evade predators, and slowly accumulate evolutionary advantages that would eventually make them dominant after the mass extinction event. By the end of the Mesozoic era, mammals had established a remarkable record of survival. Tiny, clever, and highly adaptable, they were prepared to take advantage of the opportunities presented when the reign of dinosaurs ended. Their nocturnal lifestyle, small body size, advanced teeth, fur, and reproductive strategies had created a resilient and flexible blueprint for mammalian life. These early mammals, often overlooked in the shadow of giants, had quietly become a success story of evolution, preparing for a future where they would rise to fill a world left vacant by the fallen dinosaurs. Fossils suggest that these early mammals were not only surviving, they were thriving in niches others could not exploit. Arboreal mammals climbed trees to escape predators and find food. Burrowing species dug tunnels to create safe refuges for themselves and their young. Insectivorous species hunted small prey with remarkable efficiency. Omnivorous species experimented with seeds, plants, and small vertebrates. Each adaptation, each evolutionary experiment, allowed mammals to expand into new ecological niches and diversify into forms that would eventually dominate the planet in the post-dinosaur world. These first mammals demonstrate that survival in a dangerous world is about more than size and strength. It is about intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. Small nocturnal mammals learn to sense danger, exploit opportunities, and develop complex behaviors that allowed them to survive for millions of years. They laid the foundation for all mammalian life, shaping the evolutionary trajectory that would lead to vast diversity, complexity, and ecological dominance. Over time, early mammals evolved more refined adaptations. Their teeth became more specialized for specific diets. Their brains grew slightly larger relative to body size, their senses sharpened, and their behaviors became more complex. These changes were gradual, often imperceptible in a single generation, but over millions of years they built a lineage that would eventually dominate the world. The tiny, nocturnal creatures of the dinosaur age were, in essence, the architects of mammalian success, quietly crafting a future where intelligence, adaptability, and resilience mattered more than sheer size or strength. The nocturnal habits of early mammals not only protected them from predators, but also influenced their social structures and behaviors. Hunting and foraging under the cover of darkness required coordination and awareness, which may have encouraged primitive social behaviors or communication. This early development of intelligence, awareness, and interaction provided mammals with an advantage that would only become more important after the dinosaurs disappeared. Fossils indicate that mammals had already spread widely across the continents by the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods, adapting to forests, plains, wetlands, and mountainous regions. This global distribution was remarkable for such small animals and demonstrates their capacity for exploration and adaptation. They exploited ecological niches that were inaccessible to dinosaurs, demonstrating that small size could be an advantage in survival, allowing mammals to hide, hunt, and reproduce in relative safety. The history of life on Earth is marked by periods of unimaginable change, moments when the natural order was shaken to its very core, and entire ecosystems collapsed almost overnight in geological terms. Among the most dramatic of these upheavals are the great extinction events, cataclysmic occurrences that wiped out huge numbers of species and reshaped the future of life on the planet. Life has not always progressed in a steady, calm, or predictable fashion. Instead, it has faced repeated crises that tested its resilience and forced evolution to take dramatic leaps. Across the immense stretches of time spanning hundreds of millions of years, 5 of these extinction events stand out as turning points, each radically altering the balance of life, redefining the dominant creatures, and setting the stage for the emergence of new forms of life that might otherwise never have existed. The first of these great extinction events occurred at the end of the Ordovician period, which was approximately 445 million years ago. At that time, life on Earth was largely confined to the oceans. Vast seas teemed with an array of creatures like trilobites, brachiopods, and the early ancestors of mollusks, which formed intricate ecosystems that had evolved over tens of millions of years. On land, life was still in its infancy, represented mainly by simple plants and tiny fungal growths creeping across damp soil. The Ordovician extinction was driven primarily by a dramatic and sudden change in the climate. A long ice age gripped the planet, causing sea levels to fall sharply as massive amounts of water became locked in expanding polar ice sheets. Many marine habitats, especially shallow coastal areas that had been rich breeding grounds and nurseries for countless species, disappeared virtually overnight. The resulting cooling and loss of habitat caused the extinction of around 85% of marine species, including entire families of brachiopods and bryozoans, some of the most successful organisms of the time. This event marked the first great reshaping of life, demonstrating that the planet's climate could swiftly and decisively influence the course of evolution. Following this extinction, the survivors, species that could adapt to colder waters or migrate to refuges in deeper seas, began to diversify once more, setting the stage for the next chapter in life's evolution. The second major extinction, which is often considered the largest in Earth's history, occurred at the end of the Devonian period, around 365 million years ago. By this time, life had made substantial gains on land. Early forests had begun to appear, dominated by primitive plants such as lycophytes and ferns, and the first true trees had begun to emerge. In the oceans, fish had diversified into a remarkable variety of forms, including armoured placoderms, lobe-finned fishes, and the ancestors of early sharks. However, the Devonian extinction was a prolonged event, taking place over several million years, and its causes were complex and multifaceted. Climate shifts, possibly triggered by volcanic eruptions or asteroid impacts, disrupted oceanic circulation, leading to widespread anoxia, a lack of oxygen in the seas. Many marine habitats became inhospitable, and enormous numbers of species vanished, including nearly all the armoured fish and a significant proportion of corals and brachiopods. On land, the early forests may have contributed indirectly to the crisis. The expansion of plant life changed soil composition and drew massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, triggering cooling that could have further stressed marine ecosystems. By the end of this extinction, around 70% of species had disappeared, leaving vast ecological voids that would eventually be filled by new groups, including early amphibians and more advanced fish species, whose evolutionary paths would lead to some of the dominant terrestrial vertebrates millions of years later. The third and most infamous extinction occurred at the close of the Permian period, approximately 252 million years ago. Often called the Great Dying, this event was the most severe of all the extinctions in Earth's history. Life at that time was rich and diverse. The oceans were home to complex ecosystems filled with ammonites, trilobites, and a bewildering variety of fish and invertebrates, while on land, giant insects scuttled among early forests of seed ferns, and the first large reptiles, including early ancestors of mammals, walked the Earth. The Permian extinction may have been caused by a combination of extreme volcanic activity in what is now Siberia, the release of massive amounts of greenhouse gases, and potentially asteroid impacts. These combined forces led to dramatic global warming, acid rain, and the poisoning of the oceans, which in turn caused the collapse of nearly all marine and terrestrial ecosystems. Approximately 96% of marine species disappeared, along with 70% of terrestrial vertebrates, making it the deadliest known extinction event in the history of life. The aftermath left the Earth a vastly altered place. Ecosystems were emptied, and survivors, small, adaptable species capable of enduring harsh conditions, would gradually diversify and pave the way for the rise of the dinosaurs, which would dominate the Mesozoic era. The Permian extinction highlighted just how interconnected life and the environment are, and how quickly the balance of the natural world can be disrupted. The fourth mass extinction occurred at the end of the Triassic period, about 201 million years ago. This extinction is closely tied to the rise of the dinosaurs as the dominant land animals. Before the event, the continents were still joined in the supercontinent Pangaea, and life included a mixture of early dinosaurs, crocodile-like reptiles, amphibians, and mammal-like synapsids. Marine life included corals, mollusks, and early marine reptiles. The causes of the Triassic extinction are still debated, but likely included massive volcanic eruptions, which released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide, triggering global warming and ocean acidification. Sea levels fluctuated dramatically, and habitats for many species were destroyed. As a result, roughly 80% of species were wiped out. Large amphibians and many primitive reptiles disappeared, while certain groups of marine reptiles were also severely affected. This extinction cleared the ecological playing field, allowing dinosaurs to rise unchallenged as the dominant land animals, for the next 165 million years, while the first true mammals and other small vertebrates began to explore niches left vacant by the losses. The fifth and most famous extinction occurred at the end of the Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago. This event is particularly well known because it coincided with the dramatic disappearance of the non-avian dinosaurs. By this time, flowering plants had become widespread, and ecosystems had become highly complex, including birds, mammals, reptiles, insects, and a dazzling array of marine life such as ammonites, mosasaurs, and plesiosaurs. The Cretaceous extinction is thought to have been triggered primarily by the impact of a massive asteroid striking what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, creating the Chicxulub crater. The impact would have unleashed firestorms, tsunamis, and a cloud of dust and debris that blocked sunlight for months, drastically cooling the planet. In addition, intense volcanic activity in the Deccan Traps of India may have further contributed to environmental stress. The combination of these catastrophic events led to the extinction of around 75% of all species on Earth. Non-avian dinosaurs, ammonites, pterosaurs, and many marine reptiles vanished, while mammals, birds, and other survivors found new opportunities to diversify. The extinction allowed mammals to expand into ecological niches previously dominated by dinosaurs, eventually giving rise to the age of mammals and, much later, the emergence of humans. These 5 extinction events, occurring over the course of hundreds of millions of years, reveal patterns that are both terrifying and enlightening. They show that life on Earth is resilient, but also profoundly vulnerable to sudden changes in climate, catastrophic impacts, and geological upheavals. Each extinction was not merely a period of loss, but also a prelude to renewal. Species that survived often underwent rapid evolution, leading to entirely new ecosystems, dominant creatures, and innovative forms of life. The Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Triassic, and Cretaceous extinctions each reshaped the trajectory of evolution in unique ways. Shallow seas became deep refuges, forests vanished only to regrow with new plant life, and predator-prey dynamics shifted dramatically, forcing adaptations in survival strategies, reproductive methods, and physical forms. Patterns emerge across these events that highlight the recurring forces that threaten life. Climate change, whether sudden or gradual, has been a key driver, affecting habitats, food sources, and the balance of ecosystems. Massive volcanic eruptions repeatedly altered the atmosphere, releasing carbon dioxide and sulfur gases that triggered acid rain, ocean acidification, and temperature extremes. Asteroid and comet impacts, while less frequent, produced instant devastation, wiping out species in a matter of days or weeks, and causing long-term environmental changes that reshaped life for millions of years. Ocean anoxia and fluctuations in sea level repeatedly proved deadly for marine life, showing how even life concentrated in the protective waters of the seas was far from safe. The survivors of each extinction demonstrate remarkable resilience and adaptability. Species that could tolerate extreme environmental conditions, had versatile diets, or were capable of rapid reproduction had the highest chance of enduring. Small size often conferred an advantage, as did the ability to burrow or seek refuge in protected habitats. After each extinction, these survivors radiated into empty ecological niches, giving rise to new forms of life and often leading to bursts of rapid evolutionary innovation. For example, after the Permian extinction, reptiles diversified and laid the foundation for the rise of dinosaurs. After the Cretaceous extinction, mammals expanded dramatically, ultimately giving rise to the age of humans. The effects of these extinction events are still visible today in the fossil record and in the distribution of species across the planet. Paleontologists study these periods to understand how life recovers after catastrophic losses and to learn about the forces that can destabilize ecosystems. Modern conservationists also draw lessons from these ancient crises, recognizing that current human-driven changes to the climate, habitat destruction, and biodiversity loss may be triggering a similar, though ongoing, extinction event on a much shorter timescale. The fossilized remains of trilobites, ammonites, early reptiles, and dinosaurs tell stories not only of life and death, but of resilience, adaptation, and the constant transformation of Earth's biosphere. Each of the 5 mass extinctions reshaped Earth's life in ways that continue to resonate millions of years later. The Ordovician Ice Age set patterns of marine extinction and recovery. The Devonian crisis reshaped the early vertebrate lineages, giving amphibians and fish new evolutionary opportunities. The Permian catastrophe reset ecosystems entirely, opening paths for reptiles and eventually dinosaurs. The Triassic extinction allowed dinosaurs to dominate and mammals to quietly develop in the background. Finally, the Cretaceous impact removed non-avian dinosaurs and allowed mammals and birds to diversify, setting the stage for modern ecosystems and eventually humanity itself. The story of these events emphasizes that life is neither static nor guaranteed, that survival depends on flexibility, opportunity, and resilience, and that the history of Earth is a series of collapses and recoveries that ultimately drive the diversity and complexity we see today. Across these events, the scale of destruction was staggering. The number of species lost in each event often reached millions, with entire families and orders of organisms vanishing forever. The speed of extinction varied from sudden catastrophes, such as the asteroid impact at the end of the Cretaceous, to prolonged crises like the Devonian extinction, which may have unfolded over millions of years. The environmental changes involved were equally dramatic, including shifts in temperature of many degrees, massive acidification of the oceans, loss of oxygen, alteration of atmospheric gases, and worldwide habitat destruction. Life's ability to recover from these stresses showcases its adaptability and resilience, with each recovery period producing not just replacements for lost species, but entirely new ecosystems, new interactions between organisms, and, in some cases, entirely new dominant lineages. The fossil evidence from these extinction events is incredibly rich. Ordovician brachiopods, trilobites, and cephalopods show sharp declines and recoveries in different layers of sedimentary rock. Devonian reefs, once bustling with corals and brachiopods, display signs of collapse and regrowth in the fossil record. Permian deposits contain mass die-offs of marine invertebrates and terrestrial vertebrates, while Triassic formations show the disappearance of certain amphibians and reptiles, and Cretaceous layers reveal the final traces of non-avian dinosaurs alongside the sudden rise of mammals and birds. Each layer is a snapshot of ecological collapse and renewal, offering scientists a window into the processes that have shaped the evolution of life. These mass extinctions also reveal the interconnectedness of life and the fragility of ecosystems. A shift in climate, a change in ocean chemistry, or the sudden loss of a keystone species can ripple through the food web, causing cascading extinctions and reorganizing entire ecosystems. This interconnectedness demonstrates that the survival of species is not solely a matter of individual fitness, but of complex interactions with the environment and with other organisms. Each extinction event underscores the idea that no species exists in isolation, and that large-scale changes can have far-reaching and often unpredictable consequences. The 5 mass extinctions serve as milestones in the history of life, marking moments when the Earth was dramatically transformed. From the Ordovician Ice Age to the asteroid impact at the end of the Cretaceous, these events show that life is continually subjected to forces beyond its control. They also show that life is resilient, capable of bouncing back, adapting and diversifying in ways that are often astonishingly creative. Each extinction opened new possibilities, created new ecological niches, and allowed the rise of groups that might otherwise have remained minor players in the evolutionary drama. They remind us that extinction, while catastrophic, is also an engine of evolution, driving the endless transformation of life across the eons. The scale, speed, and consequences of these extinctions provide a stark contrast to the slow and steady changes often imagined in evolution. While gradual adaptations certainly occur, the history of life is punctuated by these dramatic crises, which act as resets, wiping out the dominant species and allowing new forms to emerge. Life's story is therefore not one of continuous progress, but of a series of collapses and recoveries, of innovation born from catastrophe, and of opportunity arising from loss. The Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Triassic, and Cretaceous extinctions each brought unique challenges and consequences, but they share common features: vast loss of species, rapid environmental change, and the opening of new ecological opportunities for survivors. By examining these events, scientists can understand not only the past trajectory of life, but also the dynamics that govern ecosystems, adaptation, and resilience. These lessons are increasingly relevant as humanity faces its own environmental crises, demonstrating that extinction is not merely a relic of the deep past, but a real and present phenomenon with the power to reshape the biosphere dramatically. These extinction events reshaped food webs, habitats, and global biodiversity patterns. Predators, herbivores, and scavengers all faced new challenges, forcing adaptations in behavior, diet, and reproductive strategies. Entire ecosystems collapsed while new ones emerged from the remnants. In the oceans, reef-building corals disappeared and reappeared, ammonites vanished only to be replaced by other mollusks, and fish lineages were dramatically reshuffled. On land, forests disappeared and regrew, insects adapted to new conditions, and vertebrates evolved into new forms, from the first dinosaurs to the earliest mammals and birds. The fossil record shows that recovery from mass extinctions could take millions of years. During these recovery periods, evolution often proceeded at a rapid pace, with survivors diversifying to exploit vacant ecological niches. New forms of life emerged, including entirely new groups of animals and plants, each more specialized or more dominant than those that had been lost. The aftermath of extinctions often produced ecosystems that were radically different from those that had existed before, demonstrating the transformative power of these events. Life's history, punctuated by these 5 mass extinctions, illustrates both vulnerability and resilience. Life is fragile in the face of rapid environmental changes, catastrophic events, and disruptions of the delicate balance of ecosystems. Yet life is also astonishingly adaptable, capable of recovery, reinvention, and diversification in the wake of disaster. These extinction events demonstrate the interplay between destruction and creation, showing how the loss of one group of organisms can pave the way for the rise of another, often in ways that profoundly alter the evolutionary trajectory of the planet. The long-term consequences of the mass extinctions extend beyond the immediate loss of species. They influence evolutionary trends, drive innovations in anatomy, behavior, and physiology, and reshape the interactions between organisms and their environments. Each extinction has acted as a filter, removing species that could not cope with change while favoring those with flexibility, adaptability, or advantageous traits. Over millions of years, these filters have shaped the diversity of life we see today, influencing which groups dominate, which behaviors succeed, and which ecosystems flourish. The history of these extinction events also provides insight into the vulnerability of life to multiple simultaneous stresses. In each case, extinctions were rarely caused by a single factor. Instead, a combination of climate change, habitat loss, ocean chemistry changes, volcanic activity, and extraterrestrial impacts often work together to produce catastrophic outcomes. The complexity of these interactions emphasizes that ecosystems are dynamic, interconnected, and sensitive to both rapid and slow changes. The survival of life depends not only on individual traits, but on the ability of species to navigate a web of interdependent ecological factors. The Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Triassic, and Cretaceous extinctions highlight the dramatic shifts in the dominant forms of life over Earth's history. From the dominance of trilobites and brachiopods to the rise of early fish, the emergence of reptiles and mammals, the ascendancy of dinosaurs, and finally the expansion of mammals and birds, these events have repeatedly rewritten the rules of life. The survivors of each crisis, small, adaptable, and resilient species, have played outsized roles in shaping the subsequent evolution of life, proving that extinction, while destructive, is also a powerful driver of biological innovation. The meteor that ended the age of the dinosaurs is a tale that begins over 66 million years ago, at the very edge of the Mesozoic era, when Earth was a very different place. Back then, the continents were moving toward their present positions, the climate was warmer, the seas were higher, and dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes ruled every corner of the land. Mighty predators like Tyrannosaurus rex prowled the forests and plains, while enormous plant-eating giants such as Triceratops and Edmontosaurus grazed near rivers and lakes. Birds were beginning to take flight, tiny mammals scurried in the shadows, and reptiles ruled the skies and seas, from pterosaurs soaring overhead to mosasaurs and plesiosaurs gliding through the oceans. Life on Earth had been flourishing for over 165 million years, evolving into countless forms, some towering over 10 meters tall, others no bigger than a rabbit, all adapted to their particular niches in a thriving complex ecosystem. At the very end of this long reign, something catastrophic was about to strike. Scientists believe that a colossal space rock, an asteroid or meteorite, measuring around 10 to 15 kilometers across, entered Earth's atmosphere at tens of kilometers per second. The speed alone would have been unimaginable, and the energy released when it struck the planet was equal to billions of nuclear bombs detonating at once. This impact site is known today as the Chicxulub crater, located beneath the Yucatan Peninsula in modern-day Mexico, stretching over 180 kilometers across and nearly 20 kilometers deep. The force of the impact would have vaporized everything at the point of contact, instantly creating a fireball hotter than the surface of the sun and sending molten rock and debris hurtling into the atmosphere across the globe. The immediate effects were devastating. The impact triggered massive earthquakes, perhaps thousands of times stronger than any felt in human history, shaking the crust of the planet from one side to the other. Huge tsunamis, some hundreds of meters high, raced across oceans, smashing coastlines and sweeping away life in coastal regions. Forests near the impact site would have been instantly incinerated, and creatures in the vicinity, from dinosaurs to small mammals, would have been obliterated in moments. But these were only the initial horrors. What followed was an environmental upheaval that transformed Earth in ways no living being had ever experienced. As rock and dust shot into the sky, the sun was blocked for months, perhaps even years, creating what scientists call an impact winter. Temperatures dropped dramatically, plants could not photosynthesize, and entire food chains began to collapse. Dinosaurs, reliant on plants directly or indirectly, faced starvation. Large herbivores could not find enough food, and the carnivores that hunted them faced empty landscapes. Forests began to die back, and ecosystems that had existed for millions of years vanished almost overnight. Even tiny, resilient creatures such as insects and small mammals would have struggled to survive in the cold and darkness. As the dust settled, another deadly consequence of the impact came into play. The heat of the impact had released enormous amounts of sulfur and other gases trapped in rocks beneath the crater, which mixed with the atmosphere to produce acid rain. Rivers and lakes became highly acidic, killing fish and amphibians. Plants and animals suffered further damage from the corrosive precipitation, adding another layer of deadly stress to a world already teetering on the brink. Forest fires ignited across continents, burning millions of square kilometers of land and releasing smoke that added to the darkness of the skies. This combination of fire, darkness, cold, and acid created a perfect storm of extinction, wiping out species in a chain reaction that would forever change the face of life on Earth. The effects were not uniform everywhere, but the loss of life was staggering. Over 70% of all species on Earth perished in what is now known as the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, previously called the Cretaceous-Tertiary or KT extinction. Entire groups of animals disappeared, most famously the non-avian dinosaurs, which had dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 160 million years. Alongside them went many marine reptiles, pterosaurs, and countless species of plants, insects, and small invertebrates. The seas were hit hard too, with many plankton species that formed the base of the marine food chain vanishing, causing ripple effects that affected fish, marine reptiles, and other predators. Only a few resilient species survived, often those able to burrow, swim, or live off limited resources, such as small mammals, birds, and certain reptiles and amphibians. Evidence for this catastrophic event comes from layers of rock all over the world, which contain unusually high levels of iridium, a rare metal more common in asteroids than on Earth. This iridium layer, found in places as far apart as Italy, New Zealand, and North America, marks the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods. Scientists have also studied shocked quartz and microtectites, tiny glass-like beads formed by the intense heat of the impact, found in the same layer, confirming the enormous energy released when the meteor struck. The discovery of the Chicxulub crater in 1990, along with detailed geological studies, provided the final piece of the puzzle, showing exactly where the impact had occurred and giving insight into the sequence of events that led to such widespread devastation. The extinction reshaped life on Earth. With the giant reptiles gone, mammals, which had existed in small, mostly nocturnal forms for over 100 million years, began to diversify and expand into new ecological niches. This opened the door for the evolution of primates, eventually leading to humans millions of years later. Birds, which are the descendants of certain small theropod dinosaurs, also survived and evolved, spreading into every corner of the globe. The oceans, once dominated by Mosasaurs and Plesiosaurs, gradually saw the rise of new marine mammals like whales and dolphins, while plants and insects that survived found new opportunities to evolve and fill vacant roles in ecosystems. The meteor impact not only ended one age but also triggered a chain reaction of evolutionary changes. Extinction, while catastrophic, allowed for adaptation and diversification in the long term. Forests slowly regrew, climate patterns stabilized, and ecosystems began to recover over hundreds of thousands of years. Over time, new species arose to replace those that had disappeared, and Earth entered the Paleogene period, a time of rapid evolutionary innovation and the beginning of the modern world. The planet scarred by the impact carried evidence of this event in layers of rock, craters and fossils, a testament to both destruction and the resilience of life. Scientists have studied the KP extinction extensively, combining evidence from geology, paleontology, chemistry and astronomy to understand how a single catastrophic event could lead to such global consequences. Computer models have simulated the impact, showing how dust and aerosols would have spread around the planet, altering climate and blocking sunlight. Studies of fossil records indicate that some species survived in isolated refuges, perhaps in underground burrows or near volcanic regions, suggesting that survival often depended on adaptability and sheer luck. The impact also influenced the chemical composition of the oceans and soils, leaving a legacy that can still be traced today. The meteor's effects were compounded by other factors, such as volcanic activity. Massive volcanic eruptions in the Deccan Traps, in what is now India, were already releasing lava, ash and gases into the atmosphere around the same time. These eruptions may have weakened ecosystems and altered climate patterns, making life more vulnerable to the sudden catastrophic impact. When the meteor struck, it was as if Earth's ecosystems were already under stress, and the additional shock pushed many species beyond the brink. Scientists continue to study how these combined factors interacted to create one of the most dramatic mass extinctions in Earth's history. The KP extinction has left an enduring mark on science, culture, and imagination. Fossils of dinosaurs, preserved in rock layers immediately below the extinction boundary, show a world filled with giants, while fossils above the boundary reveal a landscape dominated by smaller mammals and birds. Museums and research centres around the world display these fossils, helping people understand both the scale of the disaster and the resilience of life that followed. The story of a single rock from space reshaping the destiny of our planet captivates scientists, storytellers, and the public alike. Geologists studying the Chicxulub crater have revealed more details about the impact. The crater's peak ring, a circle of uplifted rock, contains evidence of massive displacement, melted rock, and shocked minerals. Layers of sediment within the crater provide a timeline of the immediate aftermath, showing how the first hours and days unfolded with fire, shockwaves, and debris raining down. In addition, cores drilled from the crater have revealed signs of hydrothermal activity after the impact, indicating that heat and water interacted to create chemical changes in the rock and surrounding environment. These details allow scientists to reconstruct the chain of events with incredible precision, turning a story of destruction into one that is measurable, tangible, and deeply fascinating. Fossil evidence shows that the extinction was not instantaneous, but occurred over thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, as environmental conditions deteriorated and species failed to adapt. In some regions, dinosaur fossils become rarer and rarer in the rock layers leading up to the KPG boundary, suggesting that populations were already declining before the final blow. Plant fossils indicate massive die-offs, while marine fossils show dramatic reductions in diversity, particularly among reef-building species and plankton. The global scale of these changes highlights how interconnected life was even 66 million years ago, and how a single event could ripple across continents and oceans. Survivors of the extinction were often small, adaptable, and able to take refuge in protected environments. Small mammals that could burrow, eat a wide range of foods, and survive in darkness found ways to persist, giving them a crucial advantage. Birds that could fly or live in varied habitats also endured. Certain reptiles, amphibians, and insects survived due to similar adaptability, often exploiting microenvironments shielded from the worst effects of cold, fire, and acid rain. These survivors became the foundation for the new ecosystems that arose in the Paleogene period, demonstrating the importance of resilience, flexibility, and chance in evolution. Scientists have compared the KPG extinction to other mass extinctions in Earth's history, noting that it was unique in the combination of sudden catastrophic impact and long-term environmental consequences. Unlike extinctions caused primarily by climate change or volcanic activity alone, the KP event was driven by a sudden, almost unimaginable release of energy, followed by prolonged ecological stress. This combination made it one of the most severe and transformative events in the history of life on Earth. The story of the meteor that ended the dinosaurs is also told through vivid fossils that capture life in motion. Skeletons of dinosaurs, sometimes found curled as if in the final moments of death, tell a haunting story of sudden catastrophe. Fossilized plants, shells, and pollen grains reveal the collapse of ecosystems, while soot layers in rock capture the firestorms that raged across continents. Together, these pieces of evidence provide a picture of a planet under siege, where survival depended on resilience, adaptability, and sometimes luck. In addition to fossils and geological evidence, studies of chemical isotopes in rocks reveal dramatic shifts in the carbon cycle following the impact. Levels of carbon dioxide and other gases fluctuated wildly, indicating periods of cooling, warming, and ecological stress. These chemical signals provide a detailed record of environmental upheaval, showing how the planet's atmosphere, oceans, and land were interconnected in ways that magnified the effects of the impact. By reading these signals, scientists can reconstruct how life responded to sudden global change, offering insights not only into the past, but also into the potential effects of modern environmental crises. The Chicxulub meteor did more than end one age, it paved the way for another. By removing dominant species, it created ecological space for new forms of life to emerge. Mammals began to grow larger, evolve new behaviors, and explore new habitats. Birds diversified, spreading across continents and filling niches once held by dinosaurs. Marine ecosystems recovered with the rise of new predators, from sharks to early whales, while plants diversified in response to changing climates and ecosystems. This chain reaction of change, set in motion by a single rock from space, demonstrates the profound influence that external forces can have on the trajectory of life. Studies of the impact crater itself continue to reveal new surprises. Drilling projects have uncovered layers of rock that suggest multiple pulses of energy during the impact, perhaps as the meteor fragmented or as secondary effects rippled through the crust. Minerals formed under extreme pressure and temperature provide direct evidence of the physical forces at work, while fossilized microorganisms in sediment layers reveal how life at the smallest scales was affected. The combination of geology, paleontology, chemistry, and physics allows scientists to create a detailed reconstruction of an event that occurred over 66 million years ago, bridging the gap between the ancient world and modern scientific understanding. The extinction demonstrates the interconnectedness of life on Earth. The death of large dinosaurs affected predators and herbivores alike, while the collapse of plankton populations disrupted food chains in the oceans. Plants suffered from darkness and acid rain, insects faced the loss of food sources, and small animals endured extreme cold and fire. Every organism was part of a chain, and when the meteor struck, the chain snapped in ways that few could survive. The survivors were often those with the simplest needs, the ability to hide, or the flexibility to exploit new opportunities. Over time, these survivors became the ancestors of all modern mammals, birds, and many reptiles.